Hello there. You're safe now. Let's take a slow step away from this moment, away from the ticking clocks, the traffic, the glare of screens. Let's drift instead to a place that doesn't quite exist anymore. Not fully, not in the way it once did. A place where the wind moved, like it was remembering something through trees so tall they seemed to lean closer to hear it whisper. Where the sun hung low and red on the edge of forever, and the sea breathed in long, cold sighs against a stony shore. This was a land with no roads, no names carved into wood, just footpaths stamped by generations of boots and bare soles. No schedules, only seasons, no alarms, only the crackle of frost in the morning air and the caw of gulls like old ghosts arguing overhead. Welcome to the edge of time, a Viking village tucked against a fjord. You won't find it on a map, only in the folds of fog between now and 1,000 years ago. You wake up with something rough against your cheek, straw maybe, or reeds, or just the cold-packed dirt of the longhouse floor. Your wrists ache a little, not from rope, but from the stiffness of sleep without a pillow. There's a heaviness in your limbs like you've been chopping wood all night, and your breath fogs in the air white as morning milk. The roof above you is dark, thick beams hung low, strung with herbs and the scent of old smoke. A fire nearby crackles with sleepy laziness, casting faint orange shapes on the walls. Shadows of a kettle, a stool, maybe a fur hanging crooked. You hear snoring. Not yours. Deeper. From the far side of the hall. And the soft sound of wool shifting as someone turns over in their blanket. There's something cooking. Barley maybe. Or fish. Something earthy, salt-heavy and warm. You flex your fingers. They're calloused rough with cold. Not your usual hands. You don't know where your shoes are, but you know somehow they're thick leather caked with yesterday's mud. Your toes curl, trying to remember how they got here. Maybe you were taken. Maybe you wandered into the wrong harbour tavern and drank too much. Maybe you owe someone coin or honour or a favour from a lifetime ago. Or maybe you were born here, and this is just your life now. The reason doesn't matter anymore. Not to them. Not to the ones who saw you come in and didn't bother asking your name. You're just another body in the longhouse. Another set of hands for the oars, for the fields, for the forge. A number, a figure, a heartbeat among the many. If you enjoy these soft steps backward in time, you're welcome to gently tap the like button. Or maybe subscribe to the channel if your heart feels so inclined. Only if you'd like to wander here again on another quiet night. Now, where are you right now? Are you curled up in bed, tucked under a warm blanket? Or lying on a couch, the lights low, the room gently humming with stillness? Is it late where you are? Can you hear the soft stir of a fan or the distant hush of night traffic outside your window? Whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. It's just us now. If you haven't already, go ahead and turn off the lights. Let the dark settle in like velvet. Maybe turn on a little background hum, a soft fan, a gentle rain, whatever comforts you. Let your body soften against the mattress. Let your hands fall open. Nothing is urgent, not tonight, not here. So now close your eyes and let's begin tonight's journey. The year is somewhere around 862. The air smells of peat smoke and seawater. And outside your door, a Viking village is stretching awake, ready to begin a very, very normal day. Dawn smells like smoke and sheep. Hey guys, tonight we're going to a place where the mornings don't start with alarms or emails, but with frost on your eyebrows and the distant grunt of a pig that's somehow already mad at you. You're about to spend a completely ordinary day in a Viking village where ordinary means something between mildly exhausting and you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from? What time is it where you are? Are you under a blanket, curled up, listening to the wind outside your window? Or maybe just trying to muffle the sound of a neighbour's dog pretending to be a Viking himself? Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's barely morning, but you're already awake. You don't know how long you've been lying on the straw-stuffed mat, trying not to cough every time someone stokes the central hearth. The smoke doesn't exactly rise. It just lingers like a lazy ghost. You blink slowly, the ceiling beams still dark above you, soot-stained and sagging slightly under the weight of centuries of smoke and hanging herbs. The air smells like burnt wood sheep wool and something faintly sour that might be yesterday's fish stew still clinging to a pot no one bothered to scrub. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows like it's still learning how. Another one answers less enthusiastically, possibly mid-sneeze. You roll over. A piece of straw stabs your cheek. The blanket on top of you is fur roughly stitched, probably once belonged to something that still had opinions. It's warm enough, but damp at the edges. Your back cracks as you sit up. Someone has definitely stolen your left shoe. Your bare foot hits the packed earth floor with a thud and a wince. It's cold enough to bite, the kind of cold that wraps itself around your ankles and just waits for your soul to give up. You look around. A few others are stirring. One woman is already feeding the fire, muttering to herself in Old Norse, which even if you spoke, it still sounds like someone reciting a legal complaint to a goat. Outside the longhouse, the wind howls gently, not a full scream, more like a warning sigh, the kind of sound that makes your shoulders hunch instinctively, even under all that fur. There's movement at the far end of the hall. Someone's scraping something into a wooden bowl. Porridge, maybe. Or whatever Vikings called porridge that doesn't involve oats but might involve ground bark. Your stomach isn't sure if it's interested or just resigning itself to the inevitable. You stand careful not to wake the child sleeping 2 feet from your knee. You don't know his name, and he doesn't know yours, but he snores like an old man and clutches a carved wooden bear like it owes him rent. You shuffle to the door boots, in hand one boot and a fur-wrapped lump that'll have to do. As you push aside the heavy hide curtain, the outside world punches your face with a slap of icy air. You flinch, tears forming immediately. Your breath fogs out like you're part dragon. Cold hard earth stretches before you, rutted and muddy, scattered with straw and chicken prints and last night's fire ash. This is your street. It has no name. Just the longhouse, the forge, the fish drying rack, the barn, and a path that knows exactly where your foot will sink if you're not paying attention. Welcome to the village. Historians still argue whether small Viking settlements had any real urban planning, or if it was just huts tossed together with a general shrug. What's agreed on is this: they were functional, compact, and every single one smelled faintly of cabbage. You glance at the grey sky, flat heavy, pressing low like a ceiling, that could collapse any second. The kind of sky that makes noon look like 5 p.m, in a world where happiness never fully hatches. And then bleating. A goat wanders by wearing a look of disdain you didn't know goats could possess. It pauses to sniff your leg, decides you're not worth the trouble, and trots off toward the forge like it's got business. In the distance, someone is already yelling about firewood. You haven't even had breakfast. Breadfish and a blunt knife. Your fingers are stiff and half frozen as you fumble with your one actual boot and the other less reputable foot wrap solution. The boot squeaks as you tug it on stiff leather warped from snow and use unkind to toes. The other feels damp. You don't investigate. That way lies despair. The wind isn't just cold, it's opinionated. It slices across the village like it has somewhere to be rattling the drying rack beside the smokehouse and whipping a few unlucky feathers off a pile of plucked fowl. You pull your cloak tighter, though it doesn't help much. Wool holds heat like a memory. It fades the second you think about it too hard. Your breath clouds around you as you trudge toward the cooking fire. It's not exactly a kitchen, just a pit of stones, smoke curling upward from a low flame someone has coaxed out of damp logs, probably by sheer willpower and muttered threats. Over it hangs a pot blackened with age and regret. Inside, something thick beige and bubbling, in a way that suggests it's alive. A woman stirs it with a stick that may once have been part of a tree but is now very clearly a utensil. She nods at you. You nod back. No words are exchanged. You both know what's coming. She ladles the mixture into a wooden bowl and hands it to you. The bowl is warm. That's the nicest thing you can say about it. The contents smell like barley onion and the tired sigh of a fish who didn't quite get away. There is also a knife. It's dull. So dull, in fact, that you wonder if it's ceremonial. You use it to saw through a chunk of bread that could double as construction material. Bits crumble off. You pretend not to notice. You dip it in the gruel. It helps. A little. You take a bite. It tastes like heat and sadness, but mostly heat. A man sits beside you. You don't know his name either, but he smells like leather and salt, and his hands look like they've been personally insulted by every rope in Scandinavia. He chews slowly, stares at the fire, and mutters something about yesterday's wind being lazier. You nod like you agree. You have no idea what he means. The morning drags. The sun rises reluctantly, just enough to cast a greyish light over the fields, where frost still clings like gossip. You finish your breakfast slowly, not because you're savouring it, but because the alternative is standing up and doing things. Still, there's no avoiding it. You rise bowl in hand and set it on the washing plank, where someone will deal with it later. Possibly a child. Possibly the same goat from earlier. In this village, both seem equally capable. You pass by the forge. Inside, a blacksmith pounds iron like it insulted his ancestors. Sparks fly. The warmth is tempting, but the look he gives you says don't even think about loitering. You keep walking. You pass a few other villagers. One is sharpening an axe. Another is weaving something that might be rope, or just a very angry hairstyle. Everyone looks busy. Everyone looks cold. Everyone is pretending they didn't hear you fart when you stood up 5 minutes ago. As you make your way toward the animal pens, your fingers finally regain feeling just in time for them to hurt. It's a special kind of rural luxury frostbite that doubles as a wake-up call. Historians still argue whether breakfast in Viking villages was a communal affair or handled more privately within individual homes. What is known is that it was usually simple grain-based occasionally with dried or salted fish and rarely included anything that required smiling. And the knives. Those were technically called sayaks, and while they were useful for everything from slicing bread to self-defense, today's specimen could barely win a staring contest with butter. A child runs past you laughing. She's barefoot. You stare in horror. She doesn't seem to notice the cold at all. Her tiny feet slap the icy mud like she was born in a glacier and only came inside to mock the weak. You sigh. You flex your fingers again. The sun is a pale coin above the treetops, already losing interest. You take a deep breath that tastes like wood smoke boiled grain and the distinct tang of animal proximity, and you begin walking. You're not entirely sure where you're going, but judging by the way someone just shoved a bucket into your hands and pointed at the stream, congratulations, you are now on official water duty. You trudge on. Get dressed or get judged. The bucket creaks with each step, its wooden slats warped from years of use and perhaps mild betrayal. It leaks slightly just enough to be annoying, but not enough to be replaced. You don't know where the newer buckets are kept. You suspect they only exist in legends. The stream isn't far, but it feels far. Maybe it's the mud, or the weight of your one functioning boot, which now has a rock lodged firmly under your heel. Or maybe it's the psychological toll of having fish stew for breakfast. Again, as you walk, chickens scatter in front of you like feathery tumbleweeds. One of them glares at you. You glare back. The chicken wins. You reach the stream, crouch down and dunk the bucket into the icy water. It groans like an old man entering a cold bath. So do you. Your hands scream at the temperature, but the numbness wins quickly. You pull the bucket out, water sloshing over the edge and onto your foot wrap. Of course, you stand up slowly, feeling every bone in your back lodge a formal complaint. You start back toward the longhouse, bucket in hand, and now you have time to wonder. How did you end up here? Were you taken? A captured soul from a raid gone wrong, now pressed into service in a village that doesn't ask your name. Maybe you owed someone something. Coin, a favour, a promise you don't remember making. Or maybe you were born here. Maybe you've always been a part of this place. One more set of shoulders under the yoke of frost and firewood. But really, does it matter? The reason doesn't matter anymore. Not to the others. Not to the earth beneath your feet. Not to the man who grunted when he passed you earlier and hasn't spoken since. Here you are, just another pair of hands. another back to bend, a set of eyes to squint into the snow. You are not a name, not today. You are function. They call it survival. You call it a Tuesday. Historians still argue whether Viking society was as rigidly hierarchical as the sagas suggest. Sure, there were jarls, carls and thralls, nobles, free folk and slaves, but everyday life didn't always care what label you carried. If you could chop wood, haul water, or gut a fish without crying, you were probably useful. If not, you'd better start pretending. As you re-enter the village, a man nods toward you. It's not a greeting, it's a vague approval that you haven't spilled the water. You nod back. A social contract fulfilled. You drop off the bucket near the fire pit. Someone takes it. Doesn't thank you. That's fine. You weren't expecting applause. You weren't even expecting dry feet. A woman presses a handful of hay into your arms and gestures toward the animal pens. You nod again. You're starting to forget what it felt like to not be nodded at. The pen is muddy and loud. A pig squeals the moment it sees you. A sheep bleats disapprovingly. A cow looks at you like it's seen things dark, unforgivable things, and you are not helping. You toss in the hay. The animals descend on it like it's a feast. One pig tries to climb a goat. You look away. You smell terrible already. It's not even midday. There's a child outside the fence watching you with interest. He's holding a stick that might be a toy sword, or might be a real sword depending on how much his parents value surprise. You give him a slight wave. He narrows his eyes. You move on. You head toward the woodpile next, where someone hands you an axe without asking. The handle is smooth from use, the blade chipped. Still better than the breakfast knife. The logs are thick, your arms are not. But you start swinging anyway, rhythmically, like you've done this before. Maybe you have. Maybe you always will. The sky is still grey. The air still smells like effort. Your shoulders ache, your fingers sting, and your stomach considers a mutiny, but none of it matters. You're here now, and there's still so much left to do. Chores that would crush your spine. Wood chopping isn't just a chore, it's a performance. Each swing is a quiet negotiation between your back muscles and the weight of the axe, an axe that somehow manages to feel heavier every time you pick it up, like it's absorbing your complaints and returning them with interest. The first log splits cleanly, the second doesn't. It stares at you like a challenge. You hit it again. It shudders but holds. The third blow misses entirely and catches your shin. You don't cry out, you simply make a face that would terrify a modern dentist and keep swinging. By the fourth log, your breath comes in short, cloudy huffs. Your shoulders hum. Your palms sting. The axe handle bites into your skin like it's trying to teach you something. You don't learn. A nearby villager nods. It might mean good job, or you missed a spot, or I once chopped wood during a hailstorm while being chased by a bear. It's hard to say. Vikings were not historically known for over-explaining their feelings. A rooster struts past, looking superior. You consider challenging it. You do not. Eventually, you're told to stop, not verbally. A woman simply walks over, takes the axe, and hands you a pitchfork. No words exchanged, just a transfer of suffering. You follow her toward the barn. Now begins the gentle joy of mucking out animal stalls. You've never known a smell could be both earthy and apocalyptic, but here you are. The straw is damp, the floor squelches. One of the goats gives you a look that says, "You're not doing it right." You ignore it. You shovel muck. You drag spoiled hay. You try not to inhale through your nose, which backfires when you accidentally taste the air instead. You briefly consider running away. You don't know where. Maybe to the mountains. Maybe just into the sea. But you don't. You stay, because it's what's expected. Historians still argue whether labour in Viking villages was strictly divided by gender. While sagas often glorify warriors and raiders, most people, regardless of identity, did whatever needed doing. If your back could bend, it bent. If your arms could lift, they lifted. If you complained too loudly, someone's grandmother would outwork you just to prove a point. You pause to lean on your pitchfork. Outside, the wind picks up. It whistles through the cracks in the barn walls, tossing little swirls of hay into the air like tiny ghosts dancing just out of reach. Your stomach grumbles. It's still haunted by the fish gruel experience and clearly holds a grudge. Someone tosses you a small round of flatbread and half a dried apple. You eat without thinking. The bread is hard but edible. The apple tastes like someone once whispered fruit near it. Still you don't complain. It's something. After lunch you're herded, yes. Herded toward the edge of the village, where a small field lies half frozen under the slate-coloured sky. A handful of others are already there, stabbing the ground with crude wooden tools and muttering. You're handed something that looks like a hoe, but could also be a punishment device. Either way, you get to work. The soil is stiff, unyielding. Every push into the earth is met with resistance, as though the ground itself resents your efforts. Your hands blister, your arms ache, your spine begins composing a letter of protest. And yet, no one stops. You steal glances at the others. No one smiles. No one sings. The only sound is the rhythmic crunch of tool into soil and the occasional sniffle of someone refusing to acknowledge the cold. A man near you mutters something about how this field was tougher last year. Another responds with a grunt that could mean agreement or indigestion, possibly both. You keep digging. There's a strange comfort in it. The rhythm, the shared struggle, the complete absence of email. Still you're starting to feel it. The bone-deep weariness. You shift your weight, wince and stretch your back with a crack so loud even the goat in the barn pauses. You glance up. The sun has barely moved. Time here doesn't pass. It seeps. You return to digging. One clump of frostbitten soil at a time. The cow escapes again. Just as you're beginning to think nothing else can go wrong today, you hear it. A sound that is by now deeply familiar. Low, wet, purposeful. It is the sound of a cow on a mission. You turn your head slowly. The field, the frost, the ache in your shoulders all vanish as your focus locks on the figure at the village edge, lumbering, unpredictable, chewing something with profound resentment. It's her, the cow, the one who escapes every single time. She stands perfectly still for a moment, making direct eye contact with you. There's a shared history here, a rivalry, a saga. She's already halfway through the gate rope, trailing behind her like a dramatic exit scarf. You drop your tool and begin to run. The chase is on. Your feet slap against the muddy ground as you shout something that sounds like a command, but feels more like a prayer. Others in the field look up, sigh, and return to digging. They've seen this episode. They know how it ends. You round the corner of the fish drying racks, duck under a low arch, and nearly collide with a cartwheel. The cow dodges like a trained thief. She barrels toward the forge. The blacksmith barely glances up. Again he mutters. You don't answer. You're already moving again, breath puffing in cloudy bursts, arms flailing, one boot half off. The cow darts past the well slips, once recovers with insulting grace, and launches herself into the open space near the chieftain's hall, which is unfortunately where people are trying to nap. You hear shouts. A pot breaks. A dog starts barking. You nearly trip over the dog. The cow does not. The cow leaps the dog. You didn't know cows could leap. Historians still argue whether Viking cows were more docile than their modern descendants. Evidence suggests they were smaller and wirier, but apparently also possessed a deep sense of vengeance and an intuitive understanding of dramatic timing. Eventually you corner her near the edge of the woods, where she pauses to inspect a pine cone and momentarily forget her rebellion. You lunge, you grab the rope, you both stand there panting. She glares at you, you glare back. There is a moment of mutual respect, and then she sneezes directly on your chest. It's warm and oddly personal. You trudge back to the village, leading the cow with a hand now numb and covered in. You hope it's just mud. Your breath is shallow, your dignity is long gone. A few children follow you giggling. Someone offers a half-hearted cheer. Didn't even break anything this time, they say. Progress. You get the cow back into the pen and double knot the rope with the determination of someone who now fears bovine intelligence. The cow turns away and begins chewing smugly. You consider writing a saga about her, then decide she'd probably sue you for libel. As you wipe your hands on your already filthy tunic, you realize something truly heartbreaking. You still haven't had second breakfast. You consider protesting. You consider staging a minor rebellion. Then someone hands you a small piece of smoked fish wrapped in leaf. You eat it in 2 bites. It's salty and dry, but edible. Your teeth hurt. Everything hurts. But the cow is back in the pen. You're calling this a win. The sun, such as it is, casts a watery light over the village now. It's not warm. It's not bright. But it is. Consistent. You sit for a moment on an overturned barrel and let yourself breathe. Just 1 breath. 2. You stretch your back. You close your eyes. You hear a child trip over a chicken. You open your eyes again, and you keep going. Field work, frostbite, and faint praise. You're not sure how long you sit there on that splintery old barrel. Long enough for your knees to get stiff, but not long enough for anyone to leave you alone. Because now comes the field work. Again. You've already tasted the soil with your hands and the wind with your face, but now it's time to truly bond, with both, intimately, repeatedly, and without permission. Someone hands you a tool. It's got a handle and a sharpish end. It might be a hoe. It might be a farming relic from an older, crueler century. Either way, it says, go stab dirt. So you do. The field is half thawed, now the topsoil sticky and cold. The underlayer frozen like it made a deal with the gods to never cooperate with humans again. You plant your feet and lean into each swing, breaking clumps of icy earth apart, each one resisting like a small insult. Your hands are raw. Your breath comes in bursts. The muscles between your shoulder blades are currently writing their last will and testament. And every time you stop for more than 5 seconds, someone older and wirier gives you a look that says, we had it harder, and we did it faster, uphill both ways. You keep digging, because if you don't, they'll make you herd ducks again. The others around you are working too, in silence, in cold solidarity. Every so often, someone mutters a single word like rocks or roots or ugh. That's the full extent of communication. But the message is clear, fieldwork is the worst. Historians still argue whether Viking villagers actually did much in the way of organized farming. Some suggest they relied more on livestock and foraging. Others believe small crop patches like this one were the backbone of survival. Either way, no one denies that farming in this climate was basically a long, muddy negotiation with winter. Your reward for this labor: a compliment from an elder who stops beside you, inspects your row, nods once and grunts. High praise. You almost smile. Almost. But then from the ridge above the field, someone calls out. You squint up at the voice, shielding your eyes. It's one of the village boys waving excitedly, motioning for someone to come help. You look around, hoping someone else moves. They don't. You're the chosen one now. So you follow the boy up a short path and find yourself standing at the edge of a tangled mess of branches, snow, and what appears to be the remnants of a collapsed fence. And beneath that fence is an older man, muttering, and somehow stuck. You blink. He blinks back. There are no instructions, just expectations. So you wade in, clearing brambles, muttering your own words now. Some in English, some in something older and probably untranslatable. The man is surprisingly calm for someone who might be stuck forever. He offers helpful insights like, watch the thorns and it wasn't like this last week. After some collective shoving, lifting and groaning, he's free. He pats your shoulder with a hand that smells of ash and elderberries. You have no idea why. You don't ask. You return to the village slightly more scratched and significantly more confused than before. Someone passes you a ladle with broth in it. Fish again. You sip it while standing. That's lunch. Welcome to Viking ergonomics. You move to a bench near the central fire. It's not really warmer here, but it gives the illusion of warmth, which to be fair is 80% of warmth. Your fingers finally start to regain some feeling. That's when the itching begins. The wool of your tunic rubs against your neck like sandpaper, blessed by Odin himself. You squirm. You scratch. You try to look dignified while performing a full-body discomfort dance. It doesn't work. The child from earlier sees you, points, laughs. You're a local celebrity now. You sigh and adjust the collar. Somewhere behind you, someone starts singing. It's a low humming tune, half lullaby, half threat. It loops hypnotic and slow, and you find your shoulders relaxing a little despite themselves. The sun has moved an inch. You consider this progress. Gossip over soup, with fish bones. The singing fades, replaced by the wet thud of boots returning from the river, and the unmistakable sound of someone trying to wrestle a goose into silence. You don't look. You've learned that some Viking events are best left uninvestigated. Instead, you shuffle toward the longhouse for a brief break. The smoke inside is still clinging to the beams like gossip, and the air tastes faintly of boiled onions and old ash. You spot a corner relatively free of goat's children or mysterious puddles and settle onto a bench that might have once been a tree, but now mostly resembles a splinter collection. Lunch, if you can call it that, is being distributed again. You are handed a wooden bowl that smells of every lunch it's ever held. Inside is a tepid soup flecked with bits of dried leek bones that still look annoyed to be involved, and a generous helping of mystery. You sip. It's warm, which is the nicest thing anyone can say about it. A woman sits next to you, adjusting her headscarf and balancing a toddler on one knee. She starts talking softly, quickly, like she's getting it all out before the child interrupts. You pick up bits and pieces. Someone's goat is pregnant. Someone else owes her sister 3 spoons, and there's a squirrel in the food storage again. You nod, smile faintly. Then she leans closer and tells you a bit of gossip. So surprising, you nearly choke on a bone. Apparently, the blacksmith has been singing to his tools again. This is not shocking because he sings, but because he insists they perform better when serenaded. Specifically love songs, in falsetto. You make a noise of polite disbelief. She leans back, triumphant. The toddler sneezes directly into your bowl. You thank the gods silently and hand the bowl off to a nearby chicken who inspects it, decides it's beneath her, and walks away. A boy across the room is trying to braid his sister's hair with a bone needle. It's going poorly. The sister is losing patience. The needle is gaining knots. There's something oddly comforting about it all. The routine, the noise, the familiarity of shared discomfort. Historians still argue whether Viking meals were truly communal, or if family units tended to keep to themselves during mealtime. Most agree that food preparation was a central part of village life, and gossip, delivered alongside soup and bone splinters, was very likely one of the primary forms of information sharing. After lunch, there's a brief lull. People settle. Some nap. Some mend. Some sit with their eyes half-closed hands, moving without thought, carving, stitching, sharpening. You catch yourself doing the same, fingering a loose thread in your cloak over and over, like it holds some forgotten spell. You stand up, knees cracking like firewood, and step outside again. The air is brighter now, not warmer, just clearer. The clouds are thinner, allowing a watery sunbeam or two to slip through like nervous visitors. A small group is gathered near the well. They're laughing, loudly. You drift closer and hear snippets of the story, something about a dog, a runaway wheelbarrow, and a man who lost both his boots and his lunch in the same afternoon. No one's telling it well, but the effort is appreciated. Someone offers you a sip of something strong and brown. You take it. It burns. Your ears sweat. Children run by one of them, yelling about a stick sword which sounds harmless until you see the stick. It's sharpened. The child is not supervised. You step out of the way, just in time to avoid becoming part of a lesson in Viking first aid. You walk toward the edge of the village, where quiet lives for a few minutes at a time. A line of fish dries on a rack, twitching faintly in the wind. A dog naps in the sun patch. A bird lands on a fence post, screams once for no reason and flies off. You sit on a log, not because you're invited, but because your knees have staged a mutiny. Your fingers ache. Your face is wind-burned. But for a moment, just one, everything is still. even the cow. You allow yourself a deep breath. Then someone yells your name. They need help. Again. Children who definitely have knives. The yell comes from somewhere near the storage sheds, followed by a sharp clatter and what can only be described as giggles of escalating mischief. You groan not loudly, just enough for your soul to hear, and drag yourself upright. Your legs now move like they were negotiated for not built. You turn the corner, and there they are. The village children, all of them, gathered in a swarm, brandishing sticks, wooden shields, and at least one item that looks suspiciously like a real axe. You freeze instinctively, raising your hands, palms out, the universal gesture for I'm too tired to be involved in whatever this is. One of the smaller kids immediately points at you. You're the enemy. You blink. I just got here. Too late. They charge. You are now officially the villain in a Viking saga composed entirely by 10-year-olds, with questionable upper body strength and excellent aim. One pelts you with a moss-covered pine cone. Another strikes your shin with a wooden spear that is in fact just a broom handle. You attempt diplomacy. I'm neutral, you say. A travelling minstrel. A tax inspector. Anything. But the smallest one, a girl with braided hair and eyes like storm clouds, shouts traitor and lunges. You dodge barely and trip over a sack of turnips. Down you go. You land hard, but mostly on pride. The children cheer. You lie there for a moment, reconsidering your life, your decisions, and whether this counts as cardio. One of the kids leans over and declares, "You're dead now." You nod. Yes. Yes, I am. A moment later, someone rescues you, a teenage boy with the exhausted air of an older brother. He shouts something, and the pack of tiny warriors scatter like gulls. He offers you a hand. They're training, he says. For what you ask, brushing hay from your hair. He shrugs. Everything. Historians still argue whether Viking children actually trained with weapons from such a young age. Evidence suggests they played mock battles, practiced basic skills, and generally knew more about livestock and swordplay at 8 than most modern adults do at 40. But it's unclear how formal or how dangerous this training really was. You dust yourself off and limp away before they declare a rematch. Your next task apparently is helping reinforce a fence that's been partially digested by goats. It's not glamorous, it's not fun, but it's blissfully quiet. You hammer wooden stakes into the ground using a stone because someone borrowed the mallet and forgot where it went. Each hit vibrates up your arm and into your teeth. Progress is slow, very slow, but no one is attacking you with sticks, so that's a win. As you work, you notice something out of the corner of your eye. Movement. Tiny fingers poking through a pile of hay. You step closer. It's one of the kids hiding, or maybe nesting. She grins at you and puts a finger to her lips. Shh, I'm on a mission. You nod solemnly. I see. Do you require backup? She considers, then nods. You both crouch behind the haystack, watching the others from a distance, sharing the kind of alliance that only exhaustion and mutual respect can forge. She offers you a piece of dried fruit. You accept it without question. It's sweet and chewy, and possibly older than you. You eat it anyway. Soon enough, someone calls for her and she dashes off, cloak flapping like a flag of chaos. You stay hidden for just a moment longer. The hay smells like sun and old sheep. Your shoulders sag. You think about sleep. Then someone shouts your name. Again. This time with more urgency. Apparently the roof needs fixing, because of course it does. You're drafted to fix a roof. You stare up at the roof in question and wonder briefly if perhaps this entire village is some elaborate test. The kind you'd expect from a myth or a particularly aggressive life coach. It's not a large roof, but it is tall. And made of thatch, which is a polite way of saying loose hay daring gravity to do something about it. The ladder leaning against it looks like it was built by someone who once saw a ladder from across a field. 2 of its rungs are suspiciously soft. 1 is outright missing. You sigh because sighing is free and start climbing. The ladder wobbles like a toddler on stilts. You freeze halfway up when a sudden gust of wind flaps your cloak into your face, blinding you just long enough to imagine your own funeral, probably officiated by that smug cow. At the top, you crawl onto the roof carefully, very carefully. The thatch shifts beneath you as if testing your resolve. It smells like wet straw, ancient smoke, and pigeon decisions. You glance around. No tools. Of course not. Someone hands up a bundle of reeds and a wooden mallet the size of a small chicken. You blink down at them. This is all we have, they say. Naturally. You begin patching. One hand holding the thatch, one hand hammering it down with the mallet, one part of your soul hovering above your body in disbelief. The wind picks up again, tugging at the edges of your tunic. You clench your teeth and grip tighter. A chicken watches from a nearby roof. You are unsure how it got there. It seems unimpressed. You wedge another reed bundle in place and secure it. Then another. The rhythm is strangely calming. Press pound, adjust, repeat. You lose yourself in it for a moment, forgetting the cold, the cow, the fish-based diet. You even forget about your aching thighs, until you shift your weight slightly too far and the roof lets out a low creak. You freeze. So does the chicken. You inch back, one hand gripping a support beam that feels more decorative than structural. You make it. Barely. You breathe. Historians still argue how often Viking homes required roof maintenance. While their thatch designs were surprisingly effective at repelling rain and snow, seasonal repairs were common and usually required volunteers. Which in this context means whoever made eye contact with the wrong person after lunch. Eventually someone below waves at you to come down. You nod and begin your descent ladder creaking beneath you like it wants a say in your will. You reach the ground with all your limbs mostly intact. A few people clap, not because you did well, but because you didn't fall. That's the bar. You dust yourself off and are immediately handed a coil of rope and a command tie off the barrels. You don't know why. You don't ask. You just do it. You find the barrels behind the storage hut half covered with canvas and already beginning to freeze. The ropes are stiff. Your fingers are stiffer. You wrap them anyway in awkward loops, knots forming under your breath and sheer willpower. By the third barrel, you're starting to lose sensation in your thumbs. You finish the last tie off and stand up just in time to hear a horn. Not a big one. Just a low, reedy note blown by a boy with wind-chapped cheeks and a bone instrument. He blows it 3 times. The chieftain is coming. Not the chieftain, mind you. Just a chieftain. One of many. The local one. Important-ish. Which means it's time to pretend the entire village hasn't just been rolling around in mud and cow drama for the past 6 hours. You are immediately drafted into panic cleaning. You help sweep the path with a birch branch. You pull a goat out of someone's laundry. You rearrange barrels into something that vaguely resembles order. And you wipe your face with a rag that smells like vinegar and onions. It's the best you can do. You take your place in line just behind the blacksmith, just in front of a boy holding a fish like it's a bouquet. The horn blows again. Everyone stands straighter, and the chieftain rides into view. On a horse. A very clean horse. Because of course it is. A visit from someone important-ish. The chieftain's horse trots in with the self-assurance of someone who's never stepped in its own poop. Its mane is brushed, hooves polished, and there's a sort of smug gleam in its eye, like it knows this village is about to pretend it doesn't smell like pickled herring and wet hay. The chieftain sits tall, draped in a fur cloak that looks like it once belonged to a very fancy bear. His beard is braided, his boots are spotless, and his eyes scan the line of villagers with the bored precision of someone who hasn't needed to haul water in a decade. Behind him trails a small entourage, 2 guards in mismatched armour, one scald with a harp and a truly unfortunate moustache and a man carrying a barrel. You don't know what's in the barrel, but you know you'll be carrying it by sunset. The chieftain dismounts. You expect a speech, something inspiring, something grand. What you get is this, He sniffs. That's it. Then he nods once and walks toward the longhouse like he invented it. You glance around. No one moves until the chieftain's fur trim disappears through the curtain. Then everything explodes into motion. Someone shoves a broom into your hand. Another hands you a jug of mead that may or may not be watered down. Someone else whispers, they'll expect a toast, then vanishes. You are now on the unofficial hospitality team. Inside the longhouse, a small fire is stoked to life. The air warms just enough to make the smoke settle directly into your eyes. You blink through the tears and set down the mead. The Skald clears his throat and begins to sing. It is ambitious. The song appears to involve heroic deeds, exaggerated goat thefts, and at least one reference to thunder thighs of vengeance. The chieftain listens politely, sipping from a horn cup. You take your seat along the wall, trying to become invisible. It's not working. The Skald gestures toward you mid-verse, rhyming your name with grain and pain. You smile tightly. You are not a lyricist. You are barely a participant. Historians still argue whether Skalds improvised on the spot or memorized vast poetic sagas. But based on this man's performance, it's safe to say improvisation was both a blessing and a curse. Once the song ends mercifully, attention turns to the mead. It's passed around warm and sweetish, like honey's tired cousin. You take a sip. It helps. A little. The chieftain finally speaks. This village is tidy. Everyone exhales, like they've just dodged a tax. He nods again, more deeply this time. Someone brings out food, flatbread boiled roots, a questionable slab of smoked fish. The chieftain nibbles. You try not to watch. You absolutely watch. After a few more pleasantries, and one awkward attempt at a joke from the harp guy involving a fish, a comb, and the wrong fjord, the visit winds down. The chieftain stands. You stand. Everyone stands. He gives a final nod. Continue your efforts, he says, which is both vague and menacing. Then he leaves, just like that. The moment he's gone, the village slumps as one. You're handed the barrel. You knew it. It's heavier than it looks and sloshes ominously. You carry it to the shed, trying not to think about what's inside. Someone follows with a ledger muttering about chestnut quotas and unexpected tribute shortfalls. You nod like you understand. You do not. After the formalities, the cleanup begins. Again, you sweep, carry stack and scrape. At one point, you retrieve the same goat again from someone's pantry. It is chewing a shirt. The sun droops lower in the sky, now sending long shadows stretching across the muddy yard. The chill returns, crawling up your sleeves and down your spine. You pull your cloak tighter. Your arms saw your legs untrustworthy. Someone slaps your back. Not bad, they say. You nod. You survive another hour. Just barely. The goat ritual. You weren't told about. You're halfway through stacking the last of the firewood when you hear it. The drum. A single, low thump, soft, slow, and deliberate, like someone tapping on the underside of the world. You freeze mid-log, turn your head, and see others already doing the same. Faces tilt, eyebrows rise. No one looks alarmed, but they don't look relaxed either. You put down the log. Another thump. Then another. The rhythm builds not fast but steady like a heartbeat, if your heart belonged to someone with more feathers and stronger opinions. A child tugs your sleeve. It's time, she whispers, then sprints off into the dusk. You follow, because that's what people do when drums happen and goats disappear. Down the path behind the longhouse and past the old stone marker where moss grows in patterns that look suspiciously like runes, there's a clearing. And in that clearing, a group has gathered. Faces are painted. Torches flicker. The air smells of pine smoke and faintly of turnip. The goat is there too, alive, unbothered, possibly the guest of honor. You take your place near the edge of the circle, trying not to stand out. Someone hands you a wreath of twigs and dried berries. You don't ask questions. You put it on. The drumming stops. A woman steps forward holding a bowl of something steaming. She tosses a handful of it into the fire. Sparks rise, carrying a scent both sweet and sharp, like mead spiced with something a little too enthusiastic. She chants, or hums, or both. Others join in. It's not a language you recognize, but the meaning hums in your chest. Light returning land-thawing hope, reluctantly waking up. This, it seems, is a ritual. Historians still argue over the precise nature of Viking seasonal rituals, how pagan or performative they were, and whether goats were more symbolic or simply always nearby. What is agreed on is that gatherings like these, especially around equinoxes and solstices, were common ways to stitch a community together, through warmth, through rhythm, through the shared agreement to take weird things seriously. Now the goat is being painted, not sacrificed, not this time, just decorated, swirls of white and ochre on its sides. It seems pleased, or at least resigned. You make accidental eye contact. It blinks slowly. You nod in solidarity. A boy steps forward with a flute made from bone, maybe deer, maybe something less poetic, and begins playing a tune that wavers like the wind. Others clap softly, offbeat but earnestly. You're handed a drink. It tastes like honey and bark. You drink it anyway. Then comes the part where people dance, not gracefully, not in unison, but with purpose, stomping and swaying and laughing in a way that feels older than memory. You're dragged in by someone who grins too much and spins too fast. Your feet trip, your hands flail, you laugh. The stars are coming out now, one by one, slow and deliberate like shy performers. A woman begins a story. No one interrupts. It's about the sea, and a ship, and a storm that swallowed pride. Her voice is low and slow. The crowd leans in. Even the goat seems interested. You sit sipping something warm and questionable as the tale unfolds. You hear the words, but more than that, you feel the rhythm of it, like waves, like oars, like the wind pushing time forward, whether you like it or not. When the story ends, no one claps. They just nod. The fire pops. A log collapses inward with a soft hiss. Someone stands and announces that the fish is ready. Of course, there's fish. You line up behind a boy whose face is still streaked with charcoal and joy. He holds a plate made from bark. You are handed a flat piece of wood with something pinkish and steaming. It smells better than expected. You eat by firelight. It's soft, a little chewy, but warm. That's what matters. People drift away in twos and threes, their silhouettes disappearing into the night like stories that will be remembered only if someone chooses to retell them. You stay a while longer, until the fire is mostly ash and the goat has fallen asleep beside the drums. Then you rise and go. Back toward the longhouse, back toward sleep, back toward another kind of strange. Dinner is boiled until sad. The longhouse looms in the dark like a sleeping beast, low-wide and creaking faintly in the wind. You step inside, immediately swallowed by the warmth, the smoke and the smell of stew that's been boiling so long it's forgotten its original ingredients. It's dinner time, and that means more boiled things. A woman ladles greyish mush into bowls. It smells vaguely of roots and resignation. There's meat in it, technically. Bits of something that once swam or crawled, or maybe just sat still too long near a trap. You accept the bowl. You don't ask. You sit on a rough bench between two people you don't recognise. One sneezes into their sleeve. The other offers you a wooden spoon with a carved spiral on the handle. You nod in thanks and stir the stew. It thickens just from movement. That's not ideal. You take a bite. It's hot. And that's where the compliments end. Still, it's dinner. And after the day you've had hauling buckets, chasing cows, dodging children with weapons, this is a banquet. You chew slowly, very slowly, mostly for self-preservation. Across the room, someone starts humming. Then another joins in. It becomes a sort of lullaby. No words. Just low, meandering notes that wind through the smoke and rest against your temples. Your eyes sting, but you're not sure if it's the stew, the fire, or something more poetic. You eat another spoonful. The longhouse is crowded now. Bodies packed together in layers of fur and wool sharing space, and heat like its currency. Someone belches. Someone laughs. Someone complains about the stew, but only quietly loud enough to be heard, not loud enough to be challenged. The fire crackles. Sparks drift upward and vanish among the rafters. Your bowl is empty. When did that happen? You set it aside. Someone offers you a cup of something warm and vaguely medicinal. You drink it. It coats your throat in a way that makes you suspicious and grateful all at once. The blacksmith tells a story about a horse that wouldn't stop sneezing. It's not a good story, but it's told with such seriousness that everyone listens anyway. At the punchline, which is more of a confused shrug than a joke, people chuckle softly. You chuckle too, mostly out of peer pressure. Then comes the flute, the same bone flute from earlier. The notes wobble, at first unsure of themselves, then settle into a rhythm, slow, wandering, repetitive like a memory trying to find its way back home. You lean against the wall. The flute continues. A woman beside you dozes off mid-knitting. Her needles clack, once then fall silent in her lap. A child across the fire snores like a tiny bear. A dog stretches out near the hearth, releasing a sound that could generously be called a sigh. Less generously, a warning. You are full, you are tired. But sleep doesn't come just yet. Because now someone's passing around a pouch of dried herbs, meant for chewing, they say. Good for dreams. You decline politely. You don't need help dreaming tonight. You've already seen enough to last a week. Historians still debate the contents of the Viking diet, especially in the winter months. While fish and root vegetables were staples fermented, dairy dried meats, and preserved stews were common too. The flavour described generously as functional. The presentation often in one bowl. Shared. Someone plays a softer tune now. You close your eyes, letting the music and the flickering shadows lull your thoughts into that quiet space between waking and sleep. Then someone shifts beside you. You open one eye. It's the goat. Of course it is. It's wandered inside again and settled next to you like an old friend. It smells like pine needles and poor decisions. But it's warm. You don't argue. The goat rests its head on your knee. You sigh and accept it. The longhouse hums with life, dull, rhythmic, familiar. Someone farts gently. No one reacts. You're not sure if this is what you imagined when you pictured Viking dinner, but honestly, you're too tired to care. You lean your head back and let the quiet carry you. Firelight, flatulence, and flute songs. The fire's glow is fading now, sinking low into a cradle of embers, its light flickering gently across the rough-hewn walls. Shadows stretch and sway like tired dancers. Around you, bodies shift under furs and cloaks, settling into sleep. The way ships settle into harbour slowly with a few creaks and a lot of sighs. You try to make yourself comfortable on the bench. It's narrow, uneven, and holds the faint scent of someone else's feet. You shift, adjust, shift again. Eventually, you give up and slide down onto the floor, tucking yourself against the wall. Fur pulled over your shoulders, knees drawn up. The goat is still there. It breathes steadily, rhythmically, and you're not sure if that's comforting or unnerving. Either way, it's become your heat source. You reach out and rest your hand on its side. It doesn't move. This is your life now. Someone near the fire starts snoring deep, thunderous, and with a vibrato that suggests serious nasal commitment. It echoes. Someone else sighs dramatically. No one shushes them. There are no rules at this hour. Then a sound. A soft toot. The snorer pauses, then resumes. You press your lips together, trying not to laugh. Because this is sacred space now. The longhouse, the nighttime hush. The symphony of digestion. The blacksmith is curled near the far wall, wrapped in a blanket that definitely used to be a curtain. His massive hand sticks out, fingers twitching like he's dreaming of hammers. Beside him, a boy clutches a wooden sword and mumbles in his sleep about dragons or possibly ducks. It's hard to tell. The bone flute rests nearby, its last notes still clinging to the air like steam. No one plays now. It's the hour when even the loudest souls quiet down. When the only sounds are crackling embers, shifting furs, and the occasional philosophical goat sigh. You close your eyes. But sleep still dances just out of reach. So you listen. To the rhythm of a Viking village at rest. To the wind outside rubbing against the thatch roof like fingers drumming on a drum, too tired to answer back. To the fire whispering to itself in a language older than breath. To your own heartbeat, slow and steady, echoing somewhere beneath the layers of wool dirt, and mild emotional scarring. Historians still debate how Vikings slept, whether they had individual spaces or communal bedding. But most agree that privacy wasn't exactly a priority. Longhouses were shared, heated by central fires, and full of people who weren't particularly bashful about anything, including digestion or midnight rants about sheep theft. Someone shifts in their sleep and accidentally elbows you in the thigh. You don't move, because comfort is a myth. You glance upward through the smoke hole above the hearth. The stars are out faint and cold, watching silently. You wonder how many of them are even real. You wonder if Vikings thought the same. Probably. And then they probably named them after a bear or a fish or someone's ex-wife. The goat sneezes. You pat it once without looking, and finally, your eyelids begin to grow heavy. The weight of the day presses gently on your bones, soft, persistent, and full of meaning. You hauled, chased, lifted, and fell. You made it through the cow escape, the fieldwork, the goat ritual, and dinner stew that defied classification. You survived, which in a Viking village is really saying something. Someone near the hearth mutters a blessing to no one in particular. It floats into the dark like smoke. You murmur something back, not words, just sound. Then stillness. True stillness. The kind that only comes when the village sleeps. Dreams of raiding reality, of rashes. The world returns in pieces. First the sound of someone stirring blankets, shifting a foot, scraping across the floor. A grunt that could mean good morning, or my hip just betrayed me. Then the light grey dull, not so much rising, as reluctantly unfolding across the sky. It spills through the smoke hole, touches the edges of the longhouse like a cautious hand. No sunrise glory here. Just another day trying to exist. You're not fully awake. Not yet. Your joints ache. Your mouth is dry. The side of your face feels like it borrowed the texture of the floor. You open one eye, then the other. The goat is gone. It left without saying goodbye. Typical. You sit up slowly, cloaked in last night's stiffness, and stretch your arms toward the rafters. Something pops. Maybe your shoulder. Maybe time itself. Around you, the others begin to stir. Someone groans. Someone yawns so loudly, it sets off a chain reaction. The blacksmith sneezes into the fire, which responds with a hiss of mild judgment. You shuffle to your feet. Your legs wobble like they forgot how to be legs. You step outside, and the cold punches you in the lungs. It's crisp, sharp, like inhaling clean knives. Your eyes water immediately, as if your face itself is rejecting this day. You trudge toward the well to splash water on your face, but the bucket is frozen. You scrape a bit of frost into your palms instead. Rub it in. That counts as skincare in the Viking world. Someone nearby is already chopping wood. You wave weakly. He grunts in return. Then from across the field, you hear it again. A voice. Loud. Hopeful. Boats coming in, heads turn. People shuffle. The words ripple through the village like warm broth through a cold belly. A boat means new things. News. Goods. Sometimes strangers. Sometimes danger. But mostly it means something different. And that alone is exciting. You follow the others toward the shore, rubbing your arms for warmth. The path is muddy and still half frozen, your boots sinking in with every step. The dock is simple, just planks and rope and optimism. The boat is small but solid sail, furled a few figures already stepping off. One of them stumbles. Everyone pretends not to notice. There are crates, barrels, a suspiciously large sack that smells like onions and fish stew's evil cousin. People gather quickly, a flurry of greetings and exchanges, some spoken, some just nods and quick glances. The merchant, broad beard, full of ice, unloads without fanfare. You help. Because of course you do. You lift, you carry, you stack, and in return, you're handed a reward. A new tunic, wool, heavy, not fashionable by modern standards, but to you a miracle. Not stiff, not itchy, still warm from the sack. You slip it on under your cloak and feel like royalty. Smelly, frostbitten royalty. The merchant offers samples of something fermented and yellow. You decline, politely. Then suddenly, quietly, someone mentions raiding season, just loud enough for the words to ripple. Some of the younger men glance at each other. Smiles creep across faces. Others look away. Not everyone here raids. Not everyone here wants to. But the talk is always there, like the first itch of spring. Soon someone mutters. You nod, though. You don't know what you're agreeing to. Historians still argue about how common raids really were among Viking villagers. Were they seasonal field trips for young warriors, a way to supplement income, or just over-mythologized memories written down by monks with a flair for drama? No one knows for sure. But here now, the talk is real, and you feel the tension underneath excitement, dread the lure of distant lands, and the comfort of staying put. You shift your weight. Then the moment passes. The boatmen finish unloading. People drift away. You're handed a bundle of something you didn't ask for but now apparently own. And just like that, the day rolls forward again. No raid. Not today. You lie awake, wondering how you'll do it again. You walk back from the dock with the bundle in your arms, a curious mix of cloth scraps, smoked roots, and what you think is a very tired carrot. You don't ask questions. Asking questions leads to chores. The sun is higher now, though you wouldn't know it from the sky. It hangs low and pale like a candle trying not to offend anyone. The wind has picked up again, rustling through the eaves, lifting strands of hay off rooftops, sending them twirling like lost thoughts. The village hums back to life. Someone is chopping turnips with alarming force. Someone else is trying to repair a cartwheel with twine and hope. And you've been volunteered to help clean the fish racks. Again, you approach the drying lines where yesterday's catch has crisped into leathery submission. The smell is a presence, not just fish, ancient fish, the kind that once dreamed of oceans and now live in your sinuses. You begin pulling down the fillets, stacking them onto woven trays. The flesh sticks slightly peels off with a sound that will follow you to your dreams. A child nearby is singing something about a magic herring and the moon. You pretend not to listen, but the tune lodges in your brain like a splinter. Your hands move automatically now, the rhythm of the day taking over. Peel, stack, step, turn. You don't think, you just do. And that's when it hits you. Not a fish, not a child's stick sword, just a moment. A flicker of realization. You've done it. You've survived. A full day in this village. From the freezing floor at dawn to the stew at dusk, the goat ritual, the blacksmith's off-key, humming the absolutely unreasonable number of small-armed children through it all, you remained upright. Mostly. There's a pride in that. Not the grand kind, not the saga-worthy eagle-wrestling poetry and blood kind, but the quiet kind, the kind that lives in your sore hands and your dirty clothes, and the way no one had to yell at you twice. You're not one of them, but you didn't break. And that's something. You finish with the fish and hand the tray off to someone who grunts their thanks. You sit on a low wall watching the smoke curl up from the longhouse. Your breath mingles with it, disappearing into the cold air. Around you, life goes on. The goat passes by, still painted, still judgmental. You nod at it. It doesn't nod back. Children run past again. Fewer weapons this time, more laughter. Someone throws a snowball. Someone throws a chicken. You don't ask. A woman sets out woven mats to dry. A man is mending boots with a needle longer than your hand. The blacksmith is arguing with the cow. Everything is as it should be. Historians still wonder how ordinary Viking villagers measured time. Without clocks, days blurred, marked not by hours but by tasks: feed the animals, fix the roof, mend the net, start the fire. Life was measured in repetition, not milestones. And today, you lived one of those days. Start to finish. No glory, no conquest. Just the slow, quiet weight of survival. And now the sky begins to shift. The light softens. The cold deepens. It's time to sleep. Again. You step back into the longhouse. The same bench. The same goat. The same fur you dragged over your shoulders this morning. You lie down, you exhale, and the thought returns. You'll have to do it all again tomorrow, but not tonight. Tonight, you rest. The fire crackles beside you. Someone's flute rests silently nearby. The last light of the day fades out through the smoke hole above, and slowly, gently, your eyes close. The longhouse is quiet now. The laughter has faded into memory. The chores are forgotten. The drums, the stew, the fish, the goat, they drift softly through your thoughts like snow falling into the sea. Outside the village sleeps beneath a sky full of stars. Cold ones, distant, but faithful. The wind no longer bites, it whispers. Through branches across rooftops around the stones of the hearth. A lullaby in a language no one remembers, but everyone understands. You are warm. You are tired. And you are here. Your body sinks into the earth floor beneath you, heavy with the effort of the day. Your fingers loosen. Your breath slows. The ache in your shoulders softens into stillness. There is nothing left to carry. Not tonight. Just rest. Let the darkness hold you. Let the fire hum beside you. Let the last thoughts of fish and wool and wooden spoons float away on the smoke. You are not a warrior. You are not a chieftain. You are not a hero from the sagas. You are someone who endured quietly, completely, with dirt on your face and frozen mud on your boots. And that is enough. So let yourself drift. Away from the longhouse. Away from the chores. Away from the weight of the cold morning yet to come. You've done enough. Sleep now. Sleep. Good evening. Or whatever soft, quiet hour you find yourself in. Tonight we leave behind ticking clocks and glowing screens. We drift gently into the folds of a world that never knew electricity, where time moved with the sun and people lived by the will of the soil. Let yourself fall into the dusk of an age long past. The air here is thick with hearth smoke and olive oil. The sky above is the colour of old parchment, tinged pink by a tired sun slipping beneath the hills. The wind doesn't whisper. It creaks like an old wooden cart, carrying the weight of centuries. In the fields, the dry stalks of grain rustle like worn-out fabric. There are no calendars, no alarms, just seasons, just repetition. You are far from the world you know. You are somewhere in the belly of the Roman Empire, not in a marble villa, not in the Senate. Know your story begins in the mud. Your eyes open slowly. The straw beneath your back scratches your skin. It smells faintly of mildew and goat. The roof above you is nothing more than sticks and clay, just barely holding back the morning drizzle. One eye stings. It must have rained during the night and found its way through a crack in the ceiling. Your tongue feels dry, but not unpleasantly, so just forgotten. Like you. Your hands aren't tied, but they ache. From digging. From carrying, from living. You stretch one arm and wince at the stiffness in your shoulder. You don't remember what you dreamed, but you know it involved running. And bread, always bread. Your body is cold in places, hot in others. One leg is uncovered, poking out from under a blanket that smells like sheep. You hear a chicken clucking outside. Maybe it got loose again. Someone coughs in the next room, your mother, your wife. It doesn't matter. Not yet. You're still waking up. The air is thick with wood smoke and the faint tang of vinegar. Your breath fogs slightly. You breathe in again, slowly this time, letting your nose tell you what's cooking. Lentils. Maybe a scrap of onion if you're lucky today. How did you end up here? You might have inherited this patch of land after your cousin vanished in a tax dispute. Or maybe you were a soldier once too old to fight but not old enough to die, given a square of field and told to start over. Maybe you were born here, the 8th of 9 children. No land left, so you rent and pray. But the reason doesn't matter anymore. You are now a Roman peasant, a speck, a back bent in the field. You are one of many, a number scribbled in a ledger by a man who's never lifted a hoe in his life. And yet you persist. You breathe. You wake. You exist in this quiet, repetitive world. If this kind of quiet time travel brings you peace, I gently invite you to like this video, maybe subscribe to the channel. It's free, and it helps others just like you find their way into forgotten corners of history softly. No pressure, only if it feels right. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Are you curled beneath a blanket tucked away from the noise of the day? Maybe you've got one earbud in the other side buried in the pillow. Or perhaps you're on a train watching nighttime landscapes blur into one another. Wherever you are, welcome. You're not alone. We're here together now, in this little hidden place between dreams and dusty scrolls. If you haven't already, this is a good time to turn off the lights. Let the hum of a small fan or the crackle of an ambient playlist keep you company. Let your shoulders drop. Wiggle your toes beneath the blanket. Breathe in, then out. Slower now. And when you're ready, let's begin tonight's journey into the slow, weary, quietly enduring life of a Roman peasant. Wake up with the rooster, not a Roman god. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping out of the marble temples and away from the blood-stained colosseums. We're leaving behind the togas emperors and poetic Latin inscriptions chiseled in triumph. Instead, we're walking barefoot into the muddy, gritty, sneezy little world of the real Roman Empire. Tonight, you're not a general, a senator, or a poet scribbling about wine. You're a Roman peasant, a humble agricultural labourer in a tiny village somewhere off a dusty road where your biggest achievements include not losing a chicken and remembering where you buried your pickaxe last week. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from tonight? What time is it where you are? Are you already in bed, or maybe brushing your teeth with one eye closed? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to a rooster that has no concept of mercy. Its crow punches through the thatched ceiling like a horn announcing the end of joy. You groan shift under your rough wool blanket and immediately regret it. The floor is cold, dirt-packed and uneven. Your straw-filled mattress is less of a cushion and more of a crunchy collection of broken dreams. You sit up slowly, every joint voicing an opinion. The air inside your casa rustica, your humble countryside home, is thick with sleep and smoke. Your wife or someone's wife, honestly, relationships blur when the entire family sleeps in the same room is already up. You hear the scrape of pottery, the faint swish of something being stirred, and the unmistakable creak of someone stepping on the one squeaky floorboard that no one ever fixes. Your tunic wool, itchy, questionably brown, is crumpled at your feet. You pull it on, shivering slightly as the morning chill slips down your neck. It smells like damp herb smoke and your own body. It's familiar. You step outside. The sun hasn't yet cleared the hills. A heavy mist drapes the landscape, pooling in the dips and hollows between trees and fences. You rub your eyes and squint toward the fields, already knowing they're waiting for you like a sarcastic invitation. You stretch, or try to. Your back makes a noise like someone stepping on a bundle of twigs. You shuffle toward the small shed to relieve yourself more on that charming ritual later, and pass your neighbour's goat who looks at you with deep judgment. You nod in greeting. He sneezes. The chickens are already scratching at the earth feathers puffed against the chill. One of them is missing again. You do not investigate. It's too early for emotional crises. Inside the house, breakfast begins. Historians still argue whether Roman peasants ate 3 meals like urban elites, or merely 2 hearty ones split by hours of drudgery. But one thing's agreed upon: breakfast was not glamorous, and it certainly didn't involve coffee. You tear off a chunk of hard bread from yesterday's loaf. It's dry, very dry. You chew with the determination of someone trying to grind down limestone. You wash it down with watered-down wine from a chipped cup. It's sour, but not as sour as your mood. You sit for a moment on a stool that wobbles under your weight, watching the steam rise from the cooking pot. It's barley gruel. Again. You remind yourself not to complain out loud. The last time you did, someone offered to let you make breakfast, and you ended up setting fire to the herb shelf. You take another bite of bread and a slow breath. Your day hasn't really started yet, but your knees already know it's coming. Your life is not about glory. It's about doing the same thing you did yesterday and hoping the weather doesn't sabotage it. You stand. You stretch again. Fewer twig noises this time. You grab your tools and step out into the mist, ready to live another absolutely average day as a Roman nobody. Scratchy tunic, crusty bread, zero coffee. The mist clings to your legs as you walk, wrapping around your ankles like damp togas made of ghost breath. Your bare feet slip on the slick stones near the doorway before settling into the familiar crunch of gravel and mud. You carry your tools under one arm, a hoe, a dull spade, and the vague optimism that maybe today won't include hornets. Your tunic scratches against your skin, clinging in all the wrong places. You try not to think about it. Your first stop is the water jar by the entrance. You splash a bit on your face. It's cold. Not refreshing cold, waking up in a graveyard cold. It helps, a little. You glance down at your belt. There's no pouch, because there's nothing to put in it. You gave your last coin to a passing official 2 days ago, and unless the chickens start laying denarii, you're not getting it back. Time to dress for the rest of the day. The tunic stays sorry skin. You pull a rope around your waist. Functional, stylish, debatable. You reach for your sandals, leather cracked, held together with stubbornness and hope. The right one's missing its heel strap. You improvise with a bit of twine and something that used to be a shoelace but is now mostly wishful thinking. Then you go back inside to eat. Breakfast is still sitting in the pot barley mash. You take a wooden spoon and scoop up a chunk. Yes, chunk. The gruel has decided it wants to be solid today. It tastes like warm nothing. Slightly sour, slightly sweet, entirely beige. You chew. You swallow. You try to remember the last time you tasted something exciting. A fig and olive with flavour. A piece of cheese that didn't smell like failure. It's been a while. Historians still debate the exact diet of Roman peasants, how often they had meat, how much access they had to olive oil or fish sauce. Most agree it was heavy on grain legumes and seasonal vegetables, with meat reserved for festivals or charity from wealthier neighbours. You're not currently at a festival, or on speaking terms with your rich neighbour. So today, barley beans may be wild herbs if the kids remembered not to pick the poisonous ones. You dip your bread into the gruel. It softens slightly. You try not to notice the bit of straw stuck in the crust. You eat it anyway, one bite at a time, because that's life now. The fire crackles lazily in the hearth. The clay walls of your home are cool to the touch. Smoke hangs just beneath the ceiling, stubborn, stale, oddly comforting. It's the scent of normal. You stand again, brushing crumbs off your tunic, and take a moment to stretch your arms overhead. You almost feel tall. Then your shoulder cracks and brings you back to earth. Your wife gives you a look, half warning, half affection. "Don't forget the cistern needs clearing," she says. You nod. You always forget. You're going to forget again. Outside, the rooster crows again. It's less a cock-a-doodle-doo and more of a reminder that time is merciless. A neighbour across the road waves a spoon at you and shouts something about your dog stealing their turnips. You don't own a dog. You wave back anyway. The sun is barely peeking over the hills now. The village is stretching awake with smoke rising from rooftops and chickens plotting escapes they'll never execute. A few older folks shuffle toward the road sticks in hand faces set in expressions of practiced tolerance. You join the stream of early risers heading toward the fields, feet squelching in morning dew and mud. The path winds past broken fences and suspicious puddles. You avoid both. One last stop before work. The latrine. Shared. Open air. 2 planks and a bucket that no longer believes in hope. You do what you must. Quickly. Without eye contact. Someone passes you on their way out and nods. You nod back. You are both witnesses now. You will never speak of this. Back on the path, you shake out your sleeves and adjust your belt. The sky's getting brighter but not warmer. You shiver and start walking faster. The day hasn't even begun, and you're already hungry again. Everyone's dirt is technically public property. The fields wait for you like a slow punishment. They're not even that far from the village, just past a few scraggly olive trees and a ditch that might have once been a stream or someone's failed irrigation experiment. But they stretch out wide and dull under the morning haze, a patchwork of dirt stones, and the occasional weed that's thriving far more enthusiastically than your actual crops. You pause on the edge of your little plot. Your breath fogs in the air. The ground looks damp and sullen. So do you. It's time to get to work. You take the hoe from your shoulder. The handle is worn smooth, stained dark from years of use. And from that one time it was used as a weapon during a dispute over borrowed beans. You sink the blade into the soil. It resists. Of course it does. You put more weight behind the next swing, gritting your teeth. The soil gives a little, but mostly just rearranges itself in an unhelpful way. You chip at it again, and again. Soon you settle into the rhythm swing, step, breathe. Swing, step, curse. Your arms ache within minutes. Your back joins in shortly after. You glance to your right and see your neighbour, already hard at work, shoulders hunched, muttering to himself in a tone that could be prayer or just a very long list of complaints. You wave. He doesn't look up. The field is quiet except for birds' tools and the occasional shout from someone who's found a rock big enough to qualify as a roommate. You bend, lift, throw. Bend, lift, throw. It's not glamorous. It's not noble. It's just survival. Historians still argue whether Roman peasants worked under formal contracts or looser verbal agreements with landowners. Many were colony tenant farmers working someone else's land, paying part of their harvest as rent. Whether you own this patch of earth or just rent it from a senator you've never met doesn't really matter. The dirt doesn't know the difference. You straighten up, wiping sweat from your brow with the inside of your tunic. That was a mistake. Now your face smells like wet goat. Again. Someone calls out across the field, something about the rain not coming soon enough or coming too soon. You nod like you agree, though you didn't catch the whole sentence. Another swing. Another patch of ground broken. You spot a worm and move it gently aside. It's the most fragile thing you've seen all week. You feel oddly protective of it. The sun is climbing now. The light is brighter, more golden, more relentless. You shed your cloak and tie it around your waist, trying not to notice the growing blister on your palm. By mid-morning, the air buzzes with heat and insects. Your knees are caked in mud, and your legs are sore from crouching. You take a few steps back to inspect your work. The field still looks like a disaster. But it's a slightly organized disaster now, and that counts for something. You drop the hoe into the dirt and sit on a large stone at the edge of the plot. You stretch your back, roll your shoulders, and reach for your water skin. It's lukewarm. You drink it anyway. Nearby, a group of women gather by the olive trees, baskets in hand, chatting softly as they pick herbs or wild greens. You hear bits of conversation. Someone's cow gave birth, someone's cousin disappeared into town and came back with strange sandals and a smug look. One woman laughs. It's loud, sudden, real. It cuts through the heat like a breeze. You smile without meaning to. Then a bee lands on your ear, and the moment is over. You stand again, brush dirt from your knees and pick up the hoe. The field is still there. The weeds are still laughing. And the day is still young. Meet your tools and your future. Back problems. Your tools were forged by someone with a sense of humour and a complete disregard for comfort. The hoe's handle rubs your palm raw, and the blade, more rust than iron, requires 2 extra swings for every one job. You've named it regret. Not out loud. Just in your head. You and regret spend a lot of time together. You lean into the next patch of soil, pressing your heel into the earth for leverage. The ground gives but only enough to mock you. It clumps, crumbles, resists, and finally peels back in a grudging little curl, like a snail retreating into its shell. You scrape it aside. A stone. You sigh. Again. You kneel down and dig around it with your fingers, prying it loose. It's about the size of a loaf of bread, and almost as heavy. You heave it up, stagger a bit, and drop it into the growing pile you've started at the corner of the field, a collection of unwanted rocks, roots, and deeply held resentment. You stretch your back, which crackles in reply. Every vertebra pops like it's clapping sarcastically. Your thighs join the chorus, throbbing gently with each shift of your weight. You press your palm to the small of your back, trying to rub away the stiffness, but it only seems to move around like a guest who refuses to leave the party. Your hands are filthy, your tunic clings to your ribs, and you can feel sweat gathering in places that should never know moisture. Congratulations, it's still morning. Historians agree that Roman peasants lived physically punishing lives. Farming tools were basic. There were no ergonomic handles, no gloves, no sunscreen, no health insurance, just blistered palms and the quiet hope that you wouldn't accidentally hack off a toe with your own hoe. You take a break, not because anyone told you to, but because your body insists. You sit on a low stump near the edge of the plot and flex your fingers. They don't flex back, they just sort of hover in a claw shape. You stare at them, shake them out, and pretend you're not panicking. Your neighbour strolls by with a bundle of brushwood on his back and says, "You swing that hoe like it insulted your mother." You reply, "It did," repeatedly. He chuckles and moves on. It's the longest conversation you've had all day. A dog appears from nowhere and sniffs your leg before stealing the stale crust of bread you were saving for later. You shout. The dog ignores you. It's not even your dog. It might not be anyone's dog. You suspect it belongs to the collective universe and has a pension plan. You sigh. Again. Then you stand up. Your legs wobble briefly considering rebellion. You bribe them with the promise of sitting again later. Maybe during lunch, maybe next week. You grab regret and get back to work. The soil is uneven, but you know its quirks. There's the patch that dries too fast, the section where weeds multiply like rabbits, and the strip near the olive tree that might actually be cursed. You hoe around it. You're not taking chances. As you move through the rows, you spot something unusual. A small green shoot poking through the dirt. You kneel, wipe the sweat from your brow and examine it. A sprout. Tiny. Delicate. Alive. You smile. A real one. The kind that sneaks up on you. You press a bit of soil around the base, gently patting it down like you're tucking it into bed. Then you sit back again, just for a second, watching the sunlight skim across the ridges of dirt, the soft green leaf swaying. You remember briefly why you do this. Then your back twinges again, and you remember why you hate it. Time to switch tools. You grab your sickle, which you've named Y, and begin trimming back the edge of the field, hacking at stubborn weeds that dare to flourish where your crops do not. You work slowly, rhythmically, keeping your breath steady, trying not to think about how many hours remain in the day. Just one swing at a time. Just one weed at a time. Just you, your aching joints, and a sickle with attitude. Dig, hoe. Pray it doesn't rain. You've now been hunched over long enough that your spine feels like it's considering a new career, maybe as a spiral staircase or a question mark. The sun has fully arrived, climbing above the hills with the arrogance of something that doesn't have to weed a turnip row. Its light settles across your back, slowly cooking the damp out of your tunic and replacing it with honest sweat-soaked misery. You squint up at the cloudless sky. Beautiful. Useless. You pause to wipe your face with the hem of your sleeve. It's already damp. Now it's just wetter. Your sickle. Y has dulled significantly in the last hour, mostly from striking the same rock over and over again, like you're trying to get it to admit something. You switch back to regret. The hoe. Your old friend. You two have history. As you dig again, your stomach rumbles. Loudly. It sounds like a dying lion or perhaps a gladiator whimpering in the corner of a poorly attended amphitheatre. Either way, you take it as a sign. You've earned a break. Lunch, such as it is. You trudge to the edge of the field, where a few stones have been arranged in a makeshift circle, a place for sitting or collapsing, depending on your energy level. You pull out your meal from a coarse sack, a hunk of yesterday's bread, a small wedge of goat cheese wrapped in cabbage leaves, and something that might once have been a fig. You sit carefully because your thighs are now just complaints held together by willpower. You take a bite of the bread. It crumbles aggressively. You chew slowly, letting your jaw do most of the work. You wash it down with a sip of lukewarm water that tastes faintly of clay jug and disappointment. The goat cheese is sharp, salty, and mildly rebellious. You love it. You save the fig for last, holding it like treasure. It's dry and chewy, and just sweet enough to make your eyes close for a second. You savor it. You consider marrying it. Then it's gone. You exhale. Your stomach quiets. Someone nearby sneezes violently. You don't look. Historians mostly agree that a Roman peasant's lunch was basic bread, pulses, cheese, if they were lucky, maybe olives or dried fruit, but rarely meat and never extravagance. Food was fuel, not fun, and today your tank is only half full. A breeze kicks up, brief, cool. It lifts the edge of your tunic and sends a few loose leaves tumbling across the field. You lean back and rest your head against a smooth stone just for a moment. You close your eyes, and that's when you hear the voice. Hey, you're not sleeping, are you? You open one eye to see your neighbor's teenage son grinning down at you, arms covered in mud hair sticking out like an ambushed hedgehog. You grunt, just digesting. He laughs and jogs off, presumably to fall face first into a ditch. You hope it's a soft one. You stretch once more. Your spine pops like a handful of dry beans. Then you stand, slowly, 1 foot at a time. Your knees crack in protest. Your back threatens mutiny. Your left heel goes numb, but that's been happening for years. Back to work. You swing regret over your shoulder and return to the rows. The soil feels different now, warmer, looser, or maybe that's just your arms finally numbing enough to stop resisting. You fall back into rhythm, hoe, step, scoop, curse, repeat. A small bird lands nearby, pecking at the dirt. You nod at it. It doesn't nod back. Rude. You reach for a nearby vine to pull out some overgrowth and instantly regret it. Nettles. Your hand tingles. You curse under your breath and shake it out like someone who's just discovered nature has claws. You keep going. Because what else is there to do? The field stretches in front of you, and the sun is nowhere near done. You still have hours to go. So you hoe, you breathe, you mutter, and the dirt doesn't care. Lunch, whatever, didn't rot. Overnight. The sun is overhead now, no longer rising, just looming. It presses down like a hot hand, flattening shadows, baking the clay soil, until your sandals leave faint, crusty prints behind you. Your tunic clings to your back with the persistence of a debt collector. Even the birds have gone silent, probably hiding in the shade and judging your life choices. You pause near the edge of the field chest, heaving slightly, and lean on your hoe. Regret still loyal, still disappointing. Your stomach lets out a soft murmur. You listen. It sounds less urgent now, more philosophical, as though it's accepted its fate. Time to eat again. Not because there's a grand meal waiting, but because it's your only way to make the hours go by faster. You settle onto the same rock you used earlier now, warm from the sun and slightly smoother thanks to your rear. You pull out the rest of your humble lunch, a pouch of boiled lentils, slightly sour, wrapped in a fig leaf that's seen better days. You scoop a few spoonfuls into your mouth. They taste like every other midday meal, gritty, earthy, and faintly disappointing. Someone walks past carrying a basket of onions and muttering about weevils. You wave. They grunt. It's basically a conversation. Historians generally agree that Roman peasants didn't dine, they ate. Quickly, without utensils, with ingredients that were cheap, durable, and sometimes questionable. Legumes like lentils and chickpeas were common, as were olives, stale bread, and wild greens. The most consistent spice was necessity. Your spoon breaks halfway through your lentils. You finish with your fingers. You no longer care. The woman from 2 plots over yells something about her daughter tripping into the well again. No one reacts. It's not the first time, probably not the last. You lie back for a moment, letting the sun wash over your face. It's not relaxing. It's more like being pressed under a heated loaf of bread, but you pretend it helps. Then, just as your eyelids start to droop, a voice. You. Yes, you. You sit up. It's the tax collector, wearing a too-clean tunic, holding a wax tablet, and sweating profusely like someone who has never touched a hoe in his life. that has very strong opinions about how taxes are calculated. You wipe your hands on your tunic and stand. Name, he asks. You tell him. He writes it down with the flair of someone who's been waiting all morning to write something down. Number of chickens, he asks. Alive, you reply. He does not laugh. You list your animals, your field size, your yield. He writes. He frowns. He clicks his tongue as if your existence personally disappoints him. Tribute grain, he asks. You hesitate. You have some. Not much. But if you give it all now, what do you eat in winter? He raises an eyebrow. You point to the corner of your hut. He sends a boy to collect it. The boy returns with the sack. He opens it, inspects it, sniffs it. You resist the urge to ask if he plans to eat it right there. He nods. This'll do. Then he moves on to the next household, trailed by the boy and your grain. You exhale. Congratulations. You've just paid your taxes. In barley. Historians still argue whether Roman tax collectors were universally hated or just strongly disliked. Most agree they operated under a system of quotas and bribes, often squeezing peasants for more than they could afford, and even when they were fair, they still showed up in the middle of your lentils, which is unforgivable. You watch the collector disappear around the bend. Then you sit back down and finish licking your fingers. The taste is gone. The hunger is not. You look toward the field. It's waiting. It always is. So you stand. You pick up regret. And you return to the rouse. One more sunburned soul in a world that worships marble temples, but survives on dirt. The tax collector always arrives sweaty. Your field has turned from morning mud to afternoon dust, the top layer cracked and flaking like old parchment. Every step kicks up a little puff of earth, and soon you've got a fine coating of beige across your shins, your sandals, your pride. You return to your plot and dig in again, this time slower, not because you're lazy, but because your muscles are now operating under protest. Your arms feel like they're hanging by threads. Your lower back has composed a brief note requesting early retirement. Even your knees, usually too humble to complain, are beginning to whisper dark thoughts. You swing regret your hoe with less precision and more blind hope. The soil gives grudgingly. Then, from behind you, the worst sound of all. Hey, we're fixing a wall. You turn. A group of neighbours are waving already, halfway to a nearby house armed with buckets, planks and faces that say, "We've decided this is a community project, and you're part of the community whether you like it or not." You wave back with the sort of enthusiasm usually reserved for tax audits. But you follow them, because you have to. You trudge up the hill, your legs wobbling slightly, until you reach a crumbling courtyard wall that's decided it no longer wants to be vertical. You stare at it. It stares back. One of you is about to have a worse afternoon. You're handed a trowel, a basket of small stones, and a promise of some lentil soup later. You begin stacking and pressing the stones into place, smearing mortar made from crushed lime ash and determination between the gaps. It sticks to your hands like regret. Your left thumb gets jammed between two blocks. You pretend it doesn't hurt. A toddler waddles by carrying a stick and chanting "rock, rock, rock" with militant enthusiasm. He smacks the wall. Nothing happens. He nods and marches off. You envy his job satisfaction. Historians still debate how much communal labour Roman peasants were required to do, especially in villages away from larger estates. But the reality remains: walls had to be built, fences repaired, wells redug. And if your house wasn't falling apart this week, someone else's definitely was. You finish your section, step back, and realise it's only slightly worse than when you started. Someone claps you on the back. You wince. The sun is lower now, casting long golden shadows across the dirt. It's beautiful if you're not actively being crushed by fatigue. "Soup's ready," someone calls. You perk up. You file into a neighbour's open courtyard where a large clay pot bubbles over a fire. The scent is earthy and warm. Lentils, garlic, maybe a turnip if the gods were kind. You take a wooden bowl, dip it in, and retreat to a shady corner to sit. The soup is thick and salty and filled with tiny green things that might be herbs or just decorative weeds. You slurp it down with the enthusiasm of someone who forgot what flavor tasted like. Someone hands you a heel of bread. It's hard enough to be used as a tool. You dip it into the soup and let physics soften it. A woman nearby tells a story about her goat falling into the olive press. Again. Everyone nods like this is a perfectly normal sentence. Someone else begins a rant about the tax collector, how he smelled like fermented olives and stole 3 eggs that weren't his. You nod vigorously. The soup is gone too soon. You lean back against a wall that hasn't crumbled yet and stare at the darkening sky. A few early stars blink into view. A breeze finally stirs, lifting the sweat from your skin, teasing the hair at your temples. You close your eyes for a moment, and then you remember you still have to clean yourself. Not in a marble bath, not in a warm tub with perfume and poetry, but in the most rustic, least elegant way possible. You sigh and stand. Help build a wall you don't own. You make your way toward the bathing area, which is really just a polite term for a stone trough, fed by a spring that runs when it feels like it. Today it's trickling, barely. Like the spring itself is tired and thinking about quitting. You crouch beside the shallow basin and splash water onto your arms. It's cold, bone-deep cold. The kind of cold that wakes up your ancestors. You hiss through your teeth and keep going, rubbing your face with the edge of your tunic, which now smells like lentils and public disappointment. You scrub at your neck with a handful of sand, your only exfoliant, and remind yourself that the elite of Rome are probably lounging in marble steam rooms right now, being fanned by professional fanners and debating whether oysters count as dinner or decoration. You rinse your hands. The dirt remains. You rinse again. It laughs at you. Finally, you stop trying. The water runs muddy from your skin. You call that a win. Someone behind you is singing soft, tuneless, repetitive. You glance over. A man in his 50s with calloused hands and a missing eyebrow is washing his feet like it's the most sacred ritual in the world. You nod respectfully and move away before he starts offering advice. Back at your hut, the door creaks as you push it open. Inside, the fire is down to embers. The smoke hangs low, brushing your shoulders. You grab a fresh, well-different tunic and peel the old one off with the delicacy of someone diffusing a trap. The new one is only slightly less damp and smells faintly of thyme and someone else's sweat. You call that a win too. Historians still argue whether rural Roman peasants had access to proper bathing facilities. While larger towns had public baths, villages relied on springs wells and sheer willpower. Cleanliness was mostly seasonal and rarely thorough. Smelling vaguely herbal was usually good enough to pass for fresh. Your hands are red from scrubbing. Your feet sting. You light a small oil lamp and set it on the table beside your bed, though bed is a generous word for a mat of straw atop some uneven floorboards and one deeply judgmental goose feather. Dinner is already underway. You're handed a bowl of lentil stew by your eldest daughter, who says nothing but gives you the look of someone who had to deal with both chickens and taxes while you were off playing Fix That Wall. You nod in gratitude and sit beside the hearth. The stew is hot, which is all that matters. You eat in silence, except for the occasional crunch of something that might be a rock or might be a poorly chewed chickpea. Across from you, 2 children argue in whispers about who stole the last fig. You know it was you. You look innocent anyway. The conversation drifts lazily between bites. Someone mentions a fox being spotted near the grain store again. Someone else suspects the fox is just a hungry dog with confidence. You all agree confidence makes the difference. Then the topic shifts to scandal. Apparently someone's chicken has gone missing. Again. Accusations are made. Names whispered. Alibis doubted. You stay quiet. Because you remember seeing that very chicken earlier today. In your neighbour's pot. Boiling. Very much not missing anymore. But you don't say anything. Because silence is sometimes the only seasoning you have. The stew is finished. The bowls are licked clean. The fire is fed with a few twigs and a handful of dry grass. Smoke swirls in lazy spirals above you, painting the ceiling with soot and stories. You stretch your legs out and rub your feet. They protest loudly. You shift again. There is no soft place left in the house. Every seat, every mat, every wall leans at just the wrong angle. But you're too tired to care. Your youngest falls asleep mid-sentence, slumped against a sack of grain, like it's the most natural mattress in the world. A neighbour snores softly against the far wall. Outside, the stars blink overhead. The goats are quiet. Even the dog that isn't yours has stopped barking. You take a deep breath. Smoke, dust, garlic. It smells like home. Bathhouse dreams, muddy reality. The fire burns low, but it's enough to light the inside of your hut with a warm, flickering orange. Shadows dance lazily along the rough plaster walls. You exhale through your nose and lean your head back. A piece of straw pokes your neck. You shift. Now it's poking your shoulder. You shift again. Now it's just a part of you. Someone nearby coughs. Someone else mutters in their sleep. And somewhere beyond the wall, a donkey brays into the night, like it just remembered a bad dream. You think briefly about slipping into sleep right here, but the door creaks open. A cool gust enters the room. Along with a voice, you recognize your cousin Marcus, who smells like he's been hugging fermented hay and wants to tell everyone about it. "We're lighting the candle for the Lares," he says. You groan internally. The Lares household guardian spirits, half-remembered ancestors, half-imagined protectors. You don't know who they were in life, but in death, they've become a regular part of the evening routine. You stand up slowly, your knees reminding you that you've been kneeling, squatting, or crawling all day. You grab the tiny terracotta lamp from the ledge by the hearth and step outside. The night air slaps your face cold, damp, honest. You walk to the family shrine tucked into a hollow in the courtyard wall. It's nothing fancy, some old coins, a handful of dried laurel leaves, a cracked figurine that might once have been Jupiter, or maybe someone's uncle. You light the wick. The flame flutters, then steadies. You close your eyes and whisper a few words. Not full prayers really, more like requests, like muttering to the universe. Please let the roof hold. Please no mice. Please no more tax collectors. Someone beside you adds, and please make the rain arrive soon. You nod. That one's important. Historians know that Roman peasants often worshipped at local shrines or household altars. Offerings to Lares Penates and various agricultural deities were made with humble gestures, bits of bread, wine, or oil. What mattered wasn't grandeur, but frequency. You remembered. You lit the flame. You hoped. You place a small crust of bread beside the lamp. The dog, not yours of course, tries to eat it before it's official. You shoo him away gently. He sits down 4 feet away and looks wounded. The flame flickers in the dark. You stare at it longer than you mean to. Then someone yawns behind you, loudly. The ceremony is over. You file back inside with the others, pushing the door closed against the rising wind. The hinges creak in protest. The hut is stuffy now. Too many bodies, too little air. You crawl back to your sleeping mat and collapse sideways. Your legs ache. Your arms throb. Your stomach is full in that vague lentil-based way. You close your eyes and hear it and hear. A drip. You open one eye. Drip. From the ceiling. You sigh. Deeply. The roof is leaking again. Right over your feet. You shift your mat slightly to the left. It's now wedged between a basket of radishes and a pile of someone's shoes. You make peace with it. Then the sound returns. Not the drip. Something else. A skittering. Your eyes snap open. You glance across the room. A mouse, standing proudly near the hearth. It's staring at you like this is my house now. You stare back. You throw a small piece of wood. It misses by an impressive distance. The mouse vanishes behind a sack of grain. You sigh again. You lie back and accept the terms of your life-wet feet and confident rodents. Historians still argue how pest control was managed in Roman peasant households. Cats were used, dogs sometimes, but mostly it seems mice, and people cohabited under a silent agreement: don't eat everything, and we won't burn the place down. The fire has dimmed to a faint red glow. Your family snores softly around you. The goat outside bleats once, then falls silent. You pull the edge of your wool blanket over your shoulder and try once again to sleep. Dinner conversation includes a chicken theft scandal. You're almost asleep, drifting in that strange half place where thoughts melt and the itch on your ankle becomes a philosophical concept when it happens. A shout, then another, then several overlapping, escalating like a badly tuned chorus. You open one eye very slowly and stare into the dark. Someone's arguing, loudly, with volume commitment and absolutely no concern for the fact that you're trying to sleep next to a bag of turnips. You sit up. The shouting is coming from next door, or at least from a house close enough that the walls seem to vibrate with every accusation. Words fly fast and sharp. You always leave the coop open is met with. Well, maybe if you fix the latch instead of blaming the gods. There's mention of a missing egg, a suspected curse, and then a loud clatter as if someone has thrown something heavy at someone slightly heavier. You sigh. Again. Welcome to Roman village nightlife. You roll over, adjusting the blanket so that it covers at least one shoulder. The mouse returns, perches on the table, and watches the window like it's invested in the argument. You whisper, "Not your business," and it disappears. A child stirs nearby, muttering something about snakes and beans. Someone lets out a long theatrical snore, and still the shouting continues. You hear a few familiar voices joining in now, neighbours offering helpful commentary. Maybe you should have tied the chicken down is countered with, "Why are you keeping chickens inside your house anyway?" followed by a feint, "Because you stole the roof tiles." You stare at the ceiling, the leaky part, still dripping. You try to pretend it's rain. Historians still debate the level of community drama in Roman rural life. Written records are rare, but archaeological evidence suggests tight-knit living conditions, thin walls, and very little privacy. If your neighbour argued with their spouse, their goat, or the tax office, you knew. The noise dies down eventually. Someone shouts a final fine with the kind of force usually reserved for courtroom exits. Then silence, or what passes for silence here. You settle back into your mat. It smells like smoke and feet. You doze. Then a breeze lifts the edge of the blanket and something cold touches your toe. You flinch. It's the dog. Again, still not yours, but now curled up beside you like a hairy brick. You let him stay, out of spite or solidarity or warmth, possibly all three. Then something crashes outside. You sit up. Again. A pot, maybe a cart, a falling roof beam. You listen. Nothing. Just wind, and your own heartbeat tapping impatiently. You lie back down with the kind of exhaustion that makes you laugh softly to yourself, because you know morning is coming. Soon, very soon, and you'll have to do it all over again. You close your eyes. The fire's nearly out. The room is cold, and finally you drift. Not deeply, not safely, but enough. Enough to carry you through the rest of the night, leaks, mice dogs, and shouting included. Because this is your life, and you're strangely, tiredly, fully inside it. Offerings to spirits, hopes for dry weather. Before the sky has even considered changing colour, your eyes blink open. You're not sure what woke you. Could have been a dream. Could have been the cold tip of the dog's nose brushing your foot. Could have been the smell of someone stirring the fire back to life, wood smoke, and ash mixed with a whisper of garlic. Either way, you're awake. You lie still hoping for a few more minutes of rest, but your body disagrees. Your back throbs. Your neck protests. Your hips have become stone. You feel like you've been pressed flat by a slow-moving ox cart full of barley. You roll onto your side. Something crinkles beneath your shoulder straw, or a very brave beetle. The rooster outside lets loose a muffled pre-crow like a vocal warm-up. You mutter a word that doesn't exist in Latin but should. Time to get up. You sit, you stretch. Your spine offers a few polite pops. The fire glows softly in the hearth. Someone else is already up, shuffling around in the dark, ladling water, feeding the embers, whispering to the dog who has now decisively claimed half your mat. You reach for your tunic, which spent the night in a damp heap beside your bed. It has not improved. You shake it out and pull it over your head. It's cold. It's itchy. It smells like yesterday. Welcome to Roman peasant couture. Historians still argue whether Roman peasants had multiple sets of clothes or simply wore the same set until the fabric gave up. Some evidence points to seasonal garments, thicker cloaks in winter, lighter linens in summer, if you were lucky. You are not lucky. You are wearing wool year-round with increasing emotional distance. You pad across the floor barefoot and splash some water onto your face. It's bracing. That's the kind word. The honest word is rude. You sip from the same cup you used last night. Lukewarm water, earthy and faintly bitter. It's not refreshing, but it reminds you that you're alive, which is something. Outside dawn is just beginning to whisper across the sky, a pale blue smear behind the hills. The stars are fading one by one like tired party guests. You step out into the cold. The air bites at your cheeks. Dew slicks the stones beneath your feet. Somewhere in the distance, a cartwheel creaks. The day has begun, and your feet already hurt. You make your way toward the animal pen where the goats have started bleating. Loudly, off-key. One of them has managed to wedge its horn into the gate again. You sigh and free it with practiced hands. It doesn't thank you. No one ever does. You toss some hay into the trough. The goats dive in like they haven't eaten in days. You know for a fact they were fed just before sunset. You step away before they nibble your tunic again. At the chicken coop, the usual drama is unfolding. 2 hens are screaming at each other. A third is trying to lay an egg in the same spot. Feathers fly. You let them figure it out. You collect what eggs you can find 3, all warm and slightly muddy. You cradle them in your tunic, careful not to trip over the dog who has appeared from nowhere again and is watching you with breakfast-related intensity. Back inside, someone has stirred the barley mash into a state of edible greyness. You drop the eggs in the pot with a thump and sit near the fire rubbing your palms together. Your fingers are swollen. Your feet ache. You've been awake for maybe 12 minutes. Congratulations. You take your bowl. You eat. You don't taste much. It's bland warm, slightly gritty. There's a leaf in it that might be bay or might be something that fell from the ceiling. You swallow it either way. The family sits quietly, chewing, breathing, planning. You all know what's ahead. More fieldwork, more mending. Maybe another wall to patch. Maybe another tax notice tacked to the olive tree flapping smugly in the breeze. But first this moment, this small hush. The warmth of the fire, the scrape of the spoon, the start of another ordinary bone-tired, absolutely survivable day. Roof leaks and rodents with personalities. You step out once more, belly full of barley, and expectations set to low. The sky has shifted now, no longer pale, but a soft, sun-washed grey. The kind of grey that says, yes. Technically, I'm daytime, but refuses to commit to brightness. The air smells like damp wood, and the kind of smoke that lingers in your tunic long after it's welcome. You bend to tie the cord around your sandal. It snaps. Of course it does. You sigh, tear a strip from the hem of your tunic, and make an emergency strap. It's not pretty. It will come undone again by midday. But for now it works. That's the theme of your life technically functioning. As you turn toward the fields, a familiar voice calls out, "Hold up, you're on cistern duty today." You freeze. Cistern duty. You were hoping to avoid it. Maybe let it fall to someone more eager, or someone who enjoys wading into cold mud to remove leaves, frog skeletons, and the occasional drowned sandal. But no, it's your turn. You collect the bucket, the scoop, and the long stick, with the bent hook at the end. No one knows what it's for, but it's traditional to bring it. You trudge to the edge of the village, where the communal cistern sits, like a sunken, soggy mouth in the ground. The cover is a flat stone, heavy and cracked with the sort of markings that may be Roman numerals, or just someone trying to scratch their name in a hurry. You lift the lid. It creaks like a stage curtain opening on a one-person tragedy. Inside water. Technically. Also leaves. And bugs. And a smell that cannot be described, only endured. You lower the bucket slowly, trying not to think about what it's bumping into on the way down. You scoop. You haul. You dump. Again. 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 A frog escapes and hops into your sandal. You stare at it. It stares back. You both agree to forget this happened. Historians still argue whether village cisterns were cleaned regularly or only when things got really unpleasant. Based on your experience, regularly is generous. This one seems to have been maintained last during the reign of Augustus. After a while, your arms feel like ropes. You wipe your forehead with your forearm. Your skin is speckled with dirt and water droplets of questionable origin. You cap the cistern, lean the stick against the side, and walk away without looking back. Your reward. You've been summoned to help with laundry. Laundry in this case involves a flat stone, a stream that doesn't always stream, and a mixture of water and ash that's meant to clean things, but mostly just removes the top layer of dignity. You kneel by the water with a group of others, tunics rolled to the knee, hands deep in grey suds. You slap the fabric against the stone. The stone slaps back. Someone nearby hums a tune. Someone else gossips about a cousin who ran off with a travelling peddler and 3 jars of olive paste. You nod rhythmically, wringing out the cloth. Your hands are raw. Your sleeves are soaked. A fish swims past with judgment in its eyes. You pause to stretch your back. The sun pokes through the clouds briefly softly. It warms your shoulders for a moment, and you close your eyes to feel it fully. Then someone yells that the goat is in the laundry pile. You open your eyes. Yes, there it is, standing atop a mound of half-washed tunics, like it owns them. You sigh and chase it off with a splash of water and a few choice words that even Jupiter might blush at. It retreats. You finish your chore in silence. Historians often overlook the emotional toll of goat interference. By the time you return home, your hands are puckered and your knees ache. You hang the laundry on a rope line behind the house, where it will absorb pollen ash and wind-blown chicken feathers by nightfall. But it's clean. Technically. You sit for a moment. Not long. Just enough to breathe. Just enough to be still. Then someone calls your name. Again. Sleep. Interrupted by a shouting match. You rise slowly this time, like the joints themselves need persuasion. Your legs are made of overcooked lentils. Your lower back is locked in a silent protest. Even your fingernails feel tired. The voice calling your name belonged to Lucius. Lucius always has ideas. That's how you ended up digging a ditch last month that still floods when it rains. Can you help with the olive press? He says already, halfway down the path, not really waiting for your answer. You follow, because that's what people do. The olive press is on the edge of the village, built from weathered beams, heavy stones, and something that creaks, even when no one's touching it. It looks like it was constructed by someone who understood physics only through trial and bruises. Lucius is there, elbow deep in a basket of half-rotted olives. He grins at you. Good season, eh? You nod politely. The olives are soft. Some are more mush than fruit. You pretend not to notice the beetle crawling across the top layer. You help pour the olives into the press, an open basin of carved stone, stained dark and sticky. Then comes the beam, then the counterweight. Then your job walk in slow circles, pushing the beam so it presses the olives into a bitter, oily paste. You walk, and walk, and walk, like a donkey with opinions. The beam creaks, the stone basin groans, and gradually, dark liquid trickles down the chute into a clay jar. Olive oil. Technically, it smells pungent and faintly acidic, like something that used to be food and now has a grudge. Historians agree that olive oil was central to Roman peasant life, used for cooking lighting lamps, even cleaning skin. But they still argue whether peasants had access to good oil, or if they pressed their own from overripe fruit and hoped for the best. Judging by the smell, you're betting on the latter. Lucius dips his finger in the fresh oil and tastes it. He makes a face. Needs time, he says. You nod again. Everything in this life needs time, more than you usually have. You help transfer the jar to the cool shade of a nearby shed. It's placed beside two others, all marked with scratches so crude that even the gods would need context. Lucius thanks you with a slap on the back that nearly unhinges your spine. You shuffle back toward your hut, your steps slower now. The sun is overhead. The heat presses down like a damp hand. Dust clings to your legs. Flies orbit your head like you're some sort of tired, earthy deity. You pass the bakery, or what counts as one, a flat slab over an open fire. A woman smacks dough into discs and tosses them onto the hot surface. You stop and ask for one. She gives you half. The other half is claimed by a child who may or may not be hers. You chew the bread as you walk. It's warm, tough, and somehow both chewy and crunchy. There's a burnt edge. There's also a soft bit that tastes faintly of ash. It's perfect. You find a shady corner beside your house and collapse into it. Just for a minute. Just to rest your eyes. Just until firewood, someone says. You do not cry, but you think about it. Firewood duty is not glamorous. It's not noble. It's walking uphill to the patch of forest, gathering what deadfall you can carry, and returning without getting stabbed by brambles or bitten by anything too personal. You head out with an empty basket, the strap digging into your shoulder. The trees are still, silent. You collect dry branches, a few thicker sticks. One very uncooperative log. Your hands get scratched. A beetle runs up your sleeve. You pretend not to notice. By the time you return, the basket is full and your soul is dented, but the fire tonight will burn a little longer, and tomorrow's barley will cook a little faster. You set the basket down and wipe your brow. Dust, ash, sweat, all three are part of you now. Your feet hurt before sunrise. The afternoon drifts into that golden lull, where the sun hangs heavy shadows stretch long, and everyone moves just a little slower, because even the day itself seems tired of being awake. You sit near the doorway of your hut, half in light, half in shade. A quiet breeze tousles your hair and smells faintly of time-baked earth and goat. Always goat. Across the path, two older villagers are arguing about grain storage. You know this because the words "you never sealed it properly" have now been repeated 3 times with increasing volume and dramatic hand gestures. You wonder how much grain is really lost each year to mice mold and marital tension. Your own grain sack sits inside, tied with a bit of fraying rope. You check it every few days, not because you expect surprises, but because hope is persistent. Sometimes you'll find a stray beetle, once a very small snake, but mostly it's just less grain than before. Still, it's enough. Barely. You glance at the sky. Still a few hours before sunset. Just enough time for one more chore. Your cousin appears breathless and holding a small clay tablet. They're calling for able hands at the road. You don't ask why. You don't ask what. You just stand up, because that's how this works. You walk to the edge of the village, where a cart has lost a wheel. A few others are already there, 2 men, 1 boy, 1 woman, with arms stronger than yours. The cart lies tilted its wheel askew in the dirt like a sulking turtle. You lend your shoulder, your hands, your sweat. The wheel is heavy. The axle is stubborn. The sun is directly in your eyes. Together you grunt and strain and curse the design of carts, roads, and gravity in general. It works. Eventually. With a clunk, a creak, and the collective sigh of people who know this victory will last until the next stone in the road. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which is now more grime than fabric. Your cousin offers you a fig as thanks. It's shriveled and slightly sour. It's the best thing you've tasted all week. Historians still debate how much communal labour was expected of Roman peasants. Some say villages functioned as tight-knit collectives. Others argue that work was more transactional. Based on your reality, it's both. People help because they have to, and because next time it'll be your cart in the ditch. As you head home again, the air begins to cool. You feel it in your elbows first, oddly enough then in your neck, your fingertips the tips of your ears. The village seems to exhale. The sky blushes pink. Smoke begins curling from chimneys. Chickens settle. Goats grumble. Children chase one another with sticks and too much energy. Someone shouts, "Supper," and suddenly everything moves again. Inside your hut, the hearth is crackling. The pot simmers. Someone has added onions, or something pretending to be onions. You sit down, let your legs fold beneath you, and press your hands near the flames. They're stiff, but warm. The stew tonight tastes vaguely different, richer, with something unfamiliar. You don't ask what it is. That's the rule. If it's not moving, you eat it. You watch the flames dance in the hearth and let yourself drift. Not asleep, not awake, just somewhere in between. The voices around you are soft now. Someone hums. Someone scrapes the last of their meal from the bowl. A child leans against your side, warm and slightly sticky. You don't mind. You stare at the fire and think about olive presses and goat feathers and the exact shape of the bruise forming on your left shin from that cart. You laugh softly, because somehow it's all still funny. Exhausting, but funny. You lean back. The fire pops. The room glows. And for a fleeting moment, you think maybe tomorrow won't be so bad. Market day, barter banter, and blisters night folds itself gently over the village, not with fanfare, but like an old shawl draped over slumping shoulders. The sky deepens to ink stars poking through like pinholes in a worn curtain. You breathe out slow and heavy, as though your lungs have finally been granted permission to exhale. Inside the fire, dims pulsing red at the edges like a drowsy heartbeat. Shadows flicker along the walls, soft, stretching, swaying to their own lazy rhythm. You lie down, not because you're ready, but because there is nowhere else to go. The floor is the same as ever, firm, familiar, vaguely uneven. The blanket smells like smoke, like damp wool, like 100 other evenings, just like this one. You pull it up to your chin, then back down again. It's both too much and never enough. You hear someone outside murmur a prayer to the Lores, the household spirit said, to protect the family. The words are half remembered, mumbled passed down from someone who probably also got them wrong. You close your eyes, but sleep as usual is not in a hurry. Your thoughts scatter. Tomorrow the fields again, or the wall repair, or God's forbid the tax collector's cousin might appear to count your olives and make vaguely accusatory comments about your roof tiles. You shift. The dog returns. You don't know how he gets in, but there he is, circling twice, then settling like a warm, dusty brick at your feet. You let him stay. Again. You hear the familiar sounds of a village at rest fire popping. Someone coughing, a child giggling in their sleep, the creak of beams adjusting to the cooling air, the sigh of old straw under new weight. You wonder what time it is. Then you remember time is not your master here. The day ends when the sky says so. The day begins again when your bones ache loudly enough to rouse you. No alarms, no schedules. Just an endless loop of daylight and labour broken only by supper and stories. You lie there, eyes closed, watching images flicker across the inside of your eyelids. A plump fig warm from the sun. The glint of oil in a cracked jar. A frog in your sandal. You smile. Not everything was terrible. Historians still argue whether Roman peasants believed in an afterlife rich with reward, or whether their hope was simpler enough food, enough warmth, and one quiet night without a leaking roof. You think maybe this is enough. You stretch your legs. One toe bumps the dog. He snorts. You pull the blanket higher and listen to nothing to everything. The room exhales. The night deepens. And for once, sleep begins to loosen its knots around your shoulders. Maybe you dream of olives. Maybe you dream of figs. Maybe you just rest in a long, heavy silence like soil after the harvest, emptied, still ready to begin again. Public notice grain shortage, and a bad omen. The morning comes not with a sunrise, but with a sigh. You're not entirely sure when night became day. There was no dramatic light pouring through the slats, no rooster triumphant on a fence post, just a slow brightening, like someone turned up the volume on the world one notch at a time. Your body feels like it's been borrowed heavier in some places, thinner in others. Your fingers are stiff, your knees don't respond right away, and your face has pressed itself into the straw mat in patterns that might qualify as proto-writing. Still you sit up, because what else would you do? The dog has moved, probably in search of something edible, or at least chewable. Your blanket is a rumpled pile. The fire has died to a soft pile of ash, warm only at its deepest centre. You rake your hands through your hair. It resists. Your scalp itches. Somewhere in your tunic, a tiny pebble has taken up residence. Another day begins. Someone hands you a cup of water, cool, slightly metallic. You sip, and it slides down like a river that knows where it's going. Then a crust of yesterday's bread, too hard for teeth, but soft enough to soak. You chew slowly. The flavour is minimal. The texture is aggressive. You swallow anyway. Outside, the village begins its slow unravelling. Chickens fuss. A bucket clatters. Someone is already scolding someone else about something involving goats. You glance at the sky. Overcast. A little threatening. And just like that, you're in motion again. Today's task, repairs. A section of the outer wall has crumbled, likely the work of age rain and that one neighbour who insists on leaning against it like he's starring in a fresco. You gather tools, a wooden mallet, crude nails, handfuls of broken tile. Your feet find the rhythm of the walk before your thoughts do. The road is muddy, a mixture of last night's drizzle and this morning's refusal to dry out. At the wall, others are already gathered. You join the line. No words are exchanged at first, just nods, shrugs, and the universal groan of knees bending under weight. You haul, you brace, you lift, you hammer. The wall doesn't thank you, but it holds. For now, historians still argue whether Roman peasant villages had formal systems for maintenance or relied on spontaneous acts of necessity. Judging by the amount of shoulder injuries and creative swearing present today, it's leaning heavily toward desperate cooperation. As you wedge a new stone into place, someone nearby begins humming. A tune you don't recognize, but it feels old, older than the wall, older than the tools, older than the village itself. You hum along, because why not? By midday, the wall is patched. The tools are returned, and your hands look like they've been in a relationship with gravel. You rinse them in a stream that doesn't quite earn the name, more a trickle, a whisper of water that tickles your wrists and carries away only the loosest dirt. Still, it helps. You sit on a fallen log. Lunch today is a handful of dried peas, a scrap of hard cheese, and a pear that has seen better days. You eat it all, even the mushy part, especially the mushy part. Then you lean back, eyes half-lidded, and let the breeze speak. It tells you nothing useful, but it's kind. You think about the wall, about your knees, about the strange consistency of goat cheese, and then of nothing. The sky shifts again, lighter now, if only slightly. The clouds part just enough to let one lazy sunbeam stretch across the field. You take it as a blessing. You stand. There is always more to do. But for a moment, you just exist. Just a Roman peasant under a Roman sky with Roman dirt under your Roman toes. No speeches, no banners, just life. Again. Roman bureaucracy in all its paperwork. Glory. You head back toward the village square, or what passes for one. It's less of a square and more of a vaguely open spot where people tend to stand when nothing else demands their attention. At the centre sits a worn column stump, too short for speeches, too wide for sitting comfortably, and too cracked to remember what god it was meant to honour. You stop beside it and lean for a moment. Not dramatically. Just enough to let your spine recalibrate. Today's rumour mill is already churning. Someone heard the tax collector is sending a clerk to survey the grain stores. Someone else claims there was a bear sighting by the eastern orchard. You personally suspect it was just a large angry goat, but you nod anyway. Bears are exciting. Goats are just persistent. A boy runs past with a reed flute. He's not playing it so much as assaulting it. The notes he produces are more ambitious than accurate. You smile, because it's awful, and because it's honest. You hear a sharp whistle, someone calling for you. It's your aunt who, despite not being your actual aunt, has claimed the role with great authority. She waves a wooden spoon like a general's baton. "There's fish," she says. "Come help gut them." You follow, because that's what people do. The fish have been laid out on a board under the fig tree. Not many, just 3 little ones, silvery and limp, staring at the sky with that fishy brand of regret. You pick up the dull knife. You scrape. You slice. You try not to breathe through your nose. The scales come off in bursts silver confetti from a party no one wanted to attend. The guts are interpretive. You remove what shouldn't be there. You guess at the rest. Historians note that Roman peasants rarely had consistent access to meat or fish, relying mostly on pulses, grains, and whatever could be foraged. When fish did appear, it was usually salted or slightly suspicious. Today's catch smells freshish. You take comfort in that. Your aunt hums a lullaby as she cleans beside you. It's oddly soothing, something about a lamb and a fig tree, and a baker who forgets the flour. You don't know all the words, but the melody sticks to your skin. As the fish roast over the fire, your stomach growls with the sort of longing only experienced by people who've eaten mostly lentils for 3 days straight. You eat, carefully, quickly. There are bones, yes, but there's also oil and the crisp edge of char and the fleeting miracle of flavour. You don't speak. You just chew and let the warmth flood your limbs. Someone brings out a jug of wine, thick, sharp, barely diluted. You sip. It's more vinegar than vintage, but it's good enough. Someone else pulls out a lyre, plucks a few notes. It's clumsy, but not unpleasant. A woman begins to sing an old story, half lost in time, about a girl who turned into a river just to avoid marriage. People nod. No one laughs. It makes sense. Historians still debate how much leisure Roman peasants truly had. Some claim evenings were filled with songs and stories. Others argue survival left little room for joy. Sitting here under a fig tree with a belly full of smoky fish, you think maybe joy didn't need permission, it just slipped in where it could. The light fades. The fire pops. You lean back on your elbows, full and tired and strangely content. You don't own much. You won't be remembered. But tonight, for now, you are fed warm and surrounded by voices that know your name. And that, oddly, is enough. Someone's wedding. Everyone's problem. The moon has crept up like a nosy neighbour, low-wide and far too curious. It spills its pale light across the rooftops and courtyards, turning every crack in the stone and ripple in the water troughs into something poetic. You should be asleep, but your body has its own ideas. Instead, you walk, slowly, softly, as though afraid to disturb the very dust beneath your feet. The village is hushed now, except for a distant cough, a creaking shutter, and that one dog who always barks at absolutely nothing. You pass by huts that whisper warmth from inside windows, glowing faintly like sleepy eyes behind wool curtains. Your feet take you to the edge of the barley field. Just beyond the old shrine stands half-shaded, half-collapsed, still clinging to the idea of being sacred. You stand before it, not because you believe, but because it's tradition. You place a pebble at its base, a small offering, a small hope. You're not sure what it's meant to ask for: rain perhaps, or fewer fleas, or just one morning where your knees don't sound like kindling, but you place it anyway. That's the point, really. Not to be heard, but to say something. Historians argue whether Roman peasants maintained personal spiritual rituals distinct from the official state religion. Some suggest rustic households blended gods with household spirits, family legends, and local superstitions into something deeply intimate. Others believe most peasants simply nodded along and got back to work. You step back. The shrine doesn't reply, but something in you feels a little less noisy. You walk on, back through the sleeping village, past a hut where someone snores with operatic intensity, past another where 2 lovers whisper too softly for words, but loudly enough for everyone to know. You return home, slip inside. The fire has gone cold again. That's all right. You lie down and wrap the blanket around you. It's a bit damp on one corner, how you do not know, and you will not investigate, but the rest is warm enough. You shift, sigh, close your eyes, and just before sleep tugs at your ankles, you think of the fig tree. of the olive press, of the cart with its stubborn wheel and the goat that still hasn't apologized. You remember the tune the woman hummed as she gutted the fish, and without meaning to your breath, follows it long slow, a kind of lullaby you didn't know you carried. You sleep, for real this time. And when you wake hours later, it's to the sound of rain, gentle rhythmic tapping at the roof like a polite ghost. You don't move. You just lie there, listening. The world feels cleaner somehow. You imagine the mud softening the wells, rising the trees, grateful and smug. Rain is a gift, even if it means a miserable walk tomorrow. You let the sound soak into your bones. And in the quiet under the worn blanket, surrounded by the breath of sleeping things, you allow yourself to believe just for a moment that things might be okay. A visit from the local healer. Morning rain doesn't stop chores. It only makes them wetter. You wake with your blanket twisted around your legs and a fine mist sneaking in through the shuttered window, brushing your cheeks like a ghost with cold fingers. The roof is dripping, but not enough to panic, just enough to leave a very specific puddle in the exact spot you want to stand. You push yourself upright. Your muscles complain in every dialect. You consider lying back down. You don't. Instead, you pull on your damp tunic, shove your feet into equally damp sandals, and step outside into a world that smells like wet straw-damp earth and the faint bitterness of regret. The village is quieter today, softened by the rain. Footsteps are muffled. Voices are gentler. Even the goats seem hesitant, as if unwilling to fully commit to bleating in the downpour. Someone hands you a basket. You don't ask why. It's just what happens. Your task is to collect mushrooms along the forest edge, small pale ones that grow in clusters, and might be edible, depending on whether Mercury feels merciful today. Historians are still unsure how much Roman peasants understood about poisonous fungi. Some claim they had complex folk knowledge passed down through generations. Others suggest trial and error, and a few extremely unlucky dinners did the heavy lifting. You walk slowly, hood pulled up basket swinging against your hip. Rain patters on the leaves above falling in syncopated rhythm, quick, quick, slow, like an uncertain heartbeat. Your sandals squish. The path is more suggestion than road now, but you know it by heart. The mushrooms are exactly where you hope, clustered near the roots of a leaning oak, plump and smug in the damp. You kneel carefully. The ground kisses your knees with chilly affection. You pick them gently. Twist, pluck, place. One by one. Time disappears in the drizzle. By the time your basket is half full, your hands are stained, your knees are soaked, and you've begun to hum to yourself a tune with no name and no purpose. On the way back, you spot something strange. A cracked tile lying in the mud. Red clay faded design, maybe once part of a bathhouse or an offering table. You turn it over curious. It's cold and pointless, but you pocket it anyway. Souvenir of a day you'll forget. You return home just in time to see two children trying to chase a chicken using only a stick and sheer optimism. The chicken naturally is winning. You duck inside. Someone takes your basket. You sit by the fire and peel off your sandals, steam rising from your toes like incense for weary gods. Your feet are pruny. Your hair is clinging to your skull like a damp squirrel. You don't care. Someone brings you a bowl mushroom stew with wild herbs and miraculously a slice of crusty bread to dip. You tear it, dip it, bite. It tastes like warmth. It tastes like a pause. You eat slowly, savouring each spoonful like it's a secret. Around you, the room breathes with quiet motion, people drying things, stoking the fire, whispering plans for tomorrow that sound suspiciously like plans from every other day. And you, just a peasant, a shadow in 100 forgotten records, smile at the steam rising from your bowl. Because for once, the day hasn't broken you. Not quite. Sleep finally, if the dog doesn't steal your blanket. Evening arrives like a memory, soft around the edges, heavy with the scent of wet wood and simmering broth. You sit by the hearth, your knees tucked, close hands wrapped around the last warm cup of the day. The stew has long been eaten. The bowls have been scraped clean. but the fire still crackles with a kind of patient joy, as if it knows this is its favourite part, when everyone is full quiet and too tired to argue. Someone is telling a story. They always are. This one involves a talking crow, a lost ring, and a man who fell asleep under a fig tree and dreamed himself into a prince. The plot makes little sense. The characters switch names halfway through. The crow may or may not be your neighbour's dog in disguise, but no one cares. You laugh at the good parts. You nod through the slow ones. You steal glances at the firelight dancing across soot-stained walls, across worn sandals, and patched tunics across people you see every day and still don't quite know. There's comfort in that. Historians still debate whether Roman peasants found emotional connection in shared space or simply endured each other out of necessity. But here, in this little room with voices curling like smoke toward the rafters, you feel something more than endurance. You feel, if only for a moment, belonging. You stretch out on the mat. The dog returns damp and loyal. You let your fingers rest on his back. He doesn't move. Someone begins to hum an old tune without words. The melody is cracked but familiar, like a bowl too beloved to throw away. The hum becomes a whisper. The whisper becomes a hush, and the hush becomes the sound of the fire breathing. You close your eyes, and this time, sleep doesn't wait. It settles over you like ash, fine and soft and strangely kind. You dream of figs, of crows that talk, of that cracked tile you picked up now whole again, glowing in your palm. You wake just once long enough to register the weight of the blanket and the quiet peace of a roof that hasn't yet leaked. Then drift again, and as you do, the village dreams with you. The goats, the stones, the trees, even the tax collector probably, all breathing in rhythm, all resting under the same Roman sky. Tomorrow will be just like today, and that strangely is the most peaceful thought of all. So now, as the fire dwindles to gentle embers, and the last raindrops finish their soft applause on the roof tiles, let everything in you begin to loosen. Let your breath slow like the rising mist outside the village gates. Let your thoughts scatter like fig leaves on a breeze curling and weightless. You've walked the dirt roads. You've lifted the stones. You've endured the rain, the rumours, the stew, and the strangely cunning chicken. You've heard the songs fumbled through the chores and survived a day that most would not have lasted half through. You're not a hero. You're not a statue. You're a person with aching feet and calloused hands and a belly full of borrowed bread. And in this quiet moment that is enough, let your shoulders sink deeper into your pillow as though it's woven from barley straw and soft evening sighs. Let your breath align with the rhythm of the hearth, slow, steady, always there. The village is safe tonight. The walls hold. The gods, real or imagined, are content. Sleep now not as escape, but as return. To yourself. To the soil, to the simple miracle of stillness. The night is long, but it's gentle. The dreams ahead are yours to wander. And tomorrow is just another ordinary day.